Okay, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I am Councillor Kathy Moore, acting mayor for the evening. The mayor regrets he's unable to be with us, but he has a back injury, so we wish him well. First, we have our public input period. If there's anyone who'd like to come forward and speak to council, not as a delegation, but just to give us the benefit of your views, you have 2 minutes of our time. Anybody wish to speak? Okay, then we move on to the adoption of the agenda, and we have a couple of late additions. Anyone want to move the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Second? 10 seconds. Okay, and we're adding information items 9, G, and H. And then we've got the minutes for the Committee of the Whole meeting, council held on January 27th, 2014, be adopted and the recommendations within be approved. Do I have a mover for that? Okay, good, thank you. Seconder? Tim, thank you. Minutes for the regular meeting of council held January 27th, 2014, be adopted. Councillor Blooming, second. Councillor, someone over here on the quiet side. All right, thank you. Okay, and
Your Worship, could I just interrupt for 1 second?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't think we carried the last one, but I'm looking for the where the Committee of the Whole meeting adopted and the recommendations that within be approved. Is that where the 7th Summit Learning Center came up?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to make that correction that it's not a private school, if it's so written in the minute. Yeah, it's down, it said council discussed the funding application from the Visions of Small Schools Society for an amount over $25,000.
Right, that's on
Council
page 6.
Yeah, no specific amount was submitted. Yep. Council discussed the merits of funding private education, so that needs to be a correction. It's a public school, so
okay, do you want to just delete the word private?
Yeah, or replace it with public. Funding public education in the community, or take the word out. I don't know what council's desire is, but private definitely is incorrect.
Okay, why don't we just delete private?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of those. We didn't actually vote on the other one, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a correction for the January 27th minutes, but not the regular meeting one.
Okay, let's just vote on the COW. With that amendment, can we just vote on the COW minutes? Everybody in favor of those? Okay. Okay, thank you. And now the regular minutes. Councillor Blooming moved it, and I think Councillor Spearn seconded it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and what was your comment?
Just that the COO of CBBC, her name is Amy Ambersoni, A-I-N-C-E.
Okay, what page are you on?
Spelled wrong, is that correct?
No, the name's wrong.
What page are you on?
I'm not sure, it was members' report.
Oh, here it is.
My members' report.
Okay, that is...
On January 27th?
it looks like it's going to be page 15.
Page 15 of 75, Councillor Moore's member report.
No, Councillor Blooming.
Oh, sorry.
Page 15. Amy, it's Amy, right, not Amber.
Amy Amber,
Is
yes.
the last name spelled correctly?
I can check that,
Okay.
I'll make sure that that's
Okay.
corrected.
Okay. All in favor of those minutes? Anybody? Seeing everyone say almost yes, okay. Let's see, then we have the last one, the draft minutes of February 3rd COW meeting. I need a mover and a seconder. Okay, Councillor Spearn, seconder.
No, not me. Wasn't that Councillor Wallace?
Oh, sorry, all right, whoever, somebody speak up, okay?
Right. I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Now we have our delegation from Shaw Communications. Gentlemen, if you'd like to step forward, and I'll get out of your way.
Sure.
waiting, you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. My name is Jeff Bray. I'm the Manager of Government and Regulatory Affairs for Shaw in British Columbia. And to my left is...
My name is Greg Strom, and I'm the operations manager for all the Kootenays. Just recently moved from the island in the summer, so new to the Kootenays this past winter here.
Welcome.
And he's surviving it so far, so that's
Easy winter.
yeah. You know, as Cappuccino second coasters, you know, these real winters we struggle with sometimes. But his kids all play hockey, so he's in Mecca now. So
Good.
so wonderful. Okay, so I have to move the buttons. So thank you very much. The purpose of the presentation is Shaw's made a number of significant investments in the West Kootenays over the last several months that have culminated in our ability to launch some new and additional services on the telephone side, on the, for lack of a better term, cable TV side, but perhaps of most importance for Council is on the broadband side. And I know in conversations with the Mayor, there's been lots of discussion throughout the West Kootenays about the desire and the need to bring faster internet speeds for existing businesses and residents, but also as an economic development piece in terms of being able to attract new business and people who are looking for perhaps more of a smaller community feel, but still needing access to sort of urban city services. And so really the purpose is to go through this deck relatively quickly, and I'll try to keep it as non-technical as possible, but really then have a chance for Council, Your Worship, just to ask questions, you know, sort of whatever they would like to ask, but hopefully at the end have a good understanding of what will be available and is available in Rossland and the West Kootenays from Shaw from a perspective of broadband. So with that, and I will point the arrow down. So just a quick snapshot of Shaw, because Shaw has often been known as sort of the cable company, and we have been a cable company obviously for many years, but we're really much more than that now, and we're also a much larger company than people sometimes realize. So we have over $5 billion last year in consolidated revenue. We're now nationally well over 14,000 employees, and we are one of the larger private sector employers in British Columbia. We spend a lot of money to upgrade our plant and our cable system and our fiber system. So since 2000, it's been well over $9 billion invested, and that's primarily in Western Canada, and to that extent primarily in British Columbia and Alberta. Last year, through our philanthropic and community grant programs, we returned about $88 million into local communities, large enterprises, and large charities and small local community groups. So certainly, just for note, if community members want to look at the grant program, shaw.ca has all the information in the application forms, but certainly the philosophy is to give back to the communities where we operate. We have over 3 million customers coast to coast, so that's cable, TV, telephone, internet, and we're also Shaw Direct, which is the direct-to-home satellite TV, so there's ourselves and Bell as the two national providers. And we are a top 100 employer nationally, and we just got recognized in the top 50 of diversity employers. So, you know, certainly we have a large workforce and a very diverse one. So we have Shaw Broadband Internet, Shaw Digital TV, Shaw Home Phone, Shaw Direct. A new product that we have, and I'll talk a bit more about that, is Shaw Go Wi-Fi. For those who might be Shaw customers, you've probably noticed some of the businesses in town have that now. We have Shaw Business, which provides business solutions and fiber solutions and phone solutions for businesses large and small. We have Shaw Tracking, which is uses satellites to do fleet management and other things, and also we use some of our satellite space to broadcast. The other thing that is relatively new for Shaw, and was a big change a few years ago, is As council may recall, CanWest Global was in receivership, and actually the primary owner was Goldman Sachs out of New York, and J.R. Shaw really felt that to lose one of the three Canadian broadcasters really would have a negative impact on the ability for Canadian stories to be told, employ Canadians, and obviously having three national news services is better than only having two. So Shaw purchased CanWest Global, and so Global TV is now a part of Shaw, but so are some of the specialty channels like the Food Network and Home and Garden TV and others. So we are actually both a cable company and we're also a broadcast company. Within BC, which is a major part of our business, we have over 1 million cable customers, almost 1 million internet customers. We are the largest provider of residential broadband in Western Canada, almost 600,000 phone customers, and we do provide services from people's homes and condos to small businesses right up to large enterprises. We do the phone system for the city of Calgary, for instance. So we have a large, diverse portfolio, if you will, of customers. And in BC, we have 114,000 small and medium-sized businesses, which has been our primary focus of our business products. And we're growing that very rapidly. And, of course, that will be of interest to council with respect to services that are now available here. We have over 625,000 kilometers worth of fiber. It's the largest fiber network in North America. And that's really critical because at the end of the day, that blue line is what connects everything up and connects it up in a way that allows the vast amounts of data that everyone relies on now to travel back and forth. So, although we are primarily based in Western Canada, our network is actually a North American network. So, moving into the West Kootenays, and there have been issues in the past with things like internet speeds, and Shaw has certainly been working very hard to try to deal with the technical challenges associated with that, and the fact that if you think about the internet 10, 12 years ago, it was a fairly passive tool. You looked at some websites, you sent some emails, and that's kind of how people used it. And very quickly, how people use the internet, and more importantly, the amount of stuff that they take down the pipe and send back up the pipe, has really grown at an exponential rate. And for much of the Kootenays, both West and East Kootenay, everything was linked not by fiber, but by microwave connections, which had a very limited bandwidth, if you will, very limited ability to send information up and down. And so it was a tremendous challenge to keep pace with the way in which individuals and businesses wanted to use the internet. In addition, we had, if council remembers, some issues with respect to the ability to bring in Spokane channels into the West Kootenays, but also bringing in the high-definition channels that some people want for sports and other things, but they could only come out of Seattle. And so we also had, and those are challenges that we had to deal with our regulator, the CRTC, as to how many U.S. channels we could bring in. So we've had a number of those challenges in trying to keep up with the way consumers use the products. So over the last few years, Shaw has been spending significant capital dollars and person hours to connect the West and East Kootenays by fiber back in through Calgary. And you can imagine, the length and breadth of fiber cable that has to be strung, along railways, over mountaintops, across the bottom of Kootenay Lake, to be able to make that connection in the same way as Vancouver's connected and Kelowna's connected and Calgary's connected. We started in Calgary, made our way through the East Kootenay. Then, once Cranbrook and Kimberley were connected up, we then started the route that came across the Creston Valley, across the lake from Crawford Bay into Balfour, and then down the valley, and then up the highway here. That work was completed in the fall, so that now meant that the West Kootenays was connected to the big pipe, the really big pipe, and the very robust pipe. Then we started the work at our what's called a head end in Castlegar. That's where we collect all of the signals, all of the different streams of information, and then distribute it out to people's homes up and down the valley. And so in order to now deliver the new services, we had to make significant investments and upgrade all of the network equipment that sits in that building in Castlegar. But what that work allows us to do is to be able to deliver the full range of TV channels, high-definition channels, video on demand, the types of cable services that people want, including the Spokane channels in high definition and the BC One All News channel, which was something that I know there was some frustration here where people would see the ads for BC One but weren't able to yet get it. Well, this work has allowed for that to happen. The other major thing that occurred is we have freed up, by changing the way in which we deliver the services into people's homes, freed up huge capacity for people to now receive the high-speed internet, the true high-speed internet, into their homes and businesses. And that's, I think, what Council may have some interest in. And it provided for an 8-fold increase in the size of the pipe, for lack of a better term, that's available for communities and individual homeowners and businesses. And over the fall and winter, that digital network upgrade, as we called it, including Rossland, was completed. And quite literally, that was where we swapped out digital boxes for people and removed the analog signals from the feed, which take up huge space per channel. And everything's digital now, which allows for much, much more traffic to go up and down the pipe. And that was a multi-year process to get to this point. So what does that mean for people on the ground and for individuals and businesses in Rossland? Well, one of the key issues is prior to that change, the internet speeds were limited. At times it didn't function very well because there was a lot of use and saturation on the network because of the age of the equipment and the type of head-end technology that we had. Now we can offer broadband 10, which is 10 megabit download speed, broadband 25, broadband 100, which is what 5 or 6 years ago major businesses would have broadband 100. Well, now we can provide that to people in their homes. It's not something that a lot of people necessarily use, but if you do a lot of documentation, if you like to do video games or lots of streaming of video, that's a product that's very helpful. And we will actually, in the near future, also be able to offer up 250 megabit download. And that is where you start to look at your small and medium-sized businesses, engineering firms who do a lot of data-intensive work. Those are the types of speeds that you get in the major urban centers. The other thing that's very important is our ability to offer the business services and the unique business solutions that before we couldn't do in the West Kootenays. And so quite often, different types of businesses have very specific needs, and they need a custom solution. But you need to have a fiber connection in order to be able to offer that. And now we're able to offer that in Rossland and throughout the West Kootenay. So that basically means now you have a utility in place that companies who are looking perhaps to move or to set up shop, those are the types of things they'd be looking for. And now those things exist, at least from Shaw, that would allow for people to do custom solutions. And that's everything from just having their own connection to the internet to being able to connect to other locations of their company or their business without ever going out onto the internet. So it's a secure connection. And those are the types of things that for security and for performance companies look for. Also, just being able to provide the full TV packages is something that a lot of people have been waiting for, and now we're able to offer those things. And there's just a whole host of additional things and specialty channels and pay-per-view packages that people have wanted for some time that is now available. As I said, the BC One All News channel, which is Global's 24-hour news channel for BC in BC. The Spokane high-definition channels, which, again, it was recognized in the West Kootenays that an affiliation with Spokane, especially on news and in particular in weather, was very important, and quite frankly, the Seattle weather reports were of little value, and the Calgary weather reports even less. So we certainly heard that. We had to work with the regulator, but we're now able not only to provide them, but provide them in high definition. And in the spring, we will be launching the home and business phone services. So those are some significant service enhancements that are here now that were all made because of the ability to connect up the West Kootenays into fiber. So this is just more about some of the TV that we provide now as Shaw Media. So you probably recognize at least some of those channels, and obviously for us, global, and the ability to have both Global National done out of British Columbia, BC One, BC News Hour, as well as Kelowna, allows for BC stories to be told, in BC. And then you've got CTV and you've got CBC as well. So we think that's good for the Canadian broadcasting system, and it's good to have some diversity. Very quickly, we launched a product about a year and a half ago called Shaw Go Wi-Fi, and most people to some extent are familiar with Wi-Fi. Lots of people make use of it. Most devices now, tablets, Blackberries, iPhones, Androids, all are Wi-Fi enabled. Basically, Wi-Fi is just a wireless way to connect into the internet. And generally speaking, it doesn't cost people any money. If you go to Starbucks, they have Wi-Fi, and people will log in and send emails and look at Facebook, do whatever. What we decided to do was, instead of launching yet another cellular network and spending all that money, and there's 5 other players in the market, and building cell towers and all of those other things, we thought that in order to allow our customers to have connectivity, we would use Wi-Fi, which is a much smaller network. It's small equipment. It's very low power, and it's the way in which people will use to transmit data. And the way we deploy Shaw Go Wi-Fi is primarily through businesses, coffee shops, restaurants, malls, theaters. The Jiffy Lube's one of our main accounts, and people sit there waiting for their oil change can go on the internet and do whatever it is they want to do. And we don't charge our customers for it, and we don't charge the businesses for it. We think it's a valuable service that our customers would like to use. They don't have to use their data plan, and certainly for families where everyone in the family's got a device that's got a data plan, if you can take the teenagers off the data plan, that saves a bit of money every month, but they can still have connectivity and do what they need to do on the internet. We also have done over 40 agreements with municipalities, whereby we extend that network onto municipal infrastructure, and then we either pay for that, we lease the access, or we provide guest access for non-Shaw customers. And so we're in discussions with Rossland and other communities in the West Kootenays. But it's something that we know our customers like. It's an investment that we're making because we have the network now that can manage that type of service. And I know that we have several locations. We have 35 locations in Rossland that have it. Nelson is over 100, Castlegar's 83, Trail is 85, Grand Forks is 45. So certainly for businesses, they love it. They get some free marketing. Our customers love it because it's a free service. But it's something that we can do now that we have made the investments in fiber. So that's very quick. But I would love your worship to have questions from council. And certainly I've left Tracy's got my contact information. If you get home tonight and go, I should have asked that question, Tracy can give you my contact information. Love to hear from you. But if anything pops up now, love to
Anybody have any questions?
answer it.
I'm curious about cost, because that never came up. So what kind of costs, if a business in Rawson wanted to hook up to your broadband capabilities, what kind of...
I don't have the prices in front of me. I mean, there certainly would be competitive with whoever else is around. I don't know if you actually have a sort there's any...
Yeah, I mean, a ballpark would range anywhere from $50 a month to $300 a month. And then above and beyond that is when you start to look at direct fiber to the building.
Mhm.
And those usually start out, they're anywhere from $700 to $1,000 depending on how much allowable bandwidth you want to have and the throughput you want to have.
Mhm.
And usually the direct fiber, really when you see that, it's as Jeff mentioned, engineering companies where you're uploading maps, you just need to be able to move large files across the network really quickly.
Well, that's been one of the big conversations that we've had as a council in our community about the fact that sort of the nomadic entrepreneur business sector that we're trying to create and grow in Ross. So is the fiber all here?
So it's all here, and I think this would be a good time to talk about fiber and what it is and what it isn't, because I know that fiber is a word that gets used a lot, and I'll use a municipal comparison. I would imagine that Rossland, which manages the water system, delivers some water through cement pipes, and some of the pipes are PVC. And the issue is not what the pipe is made of, it's how big is the pipe. And there is a belief that somehow fiber, if you have fiber into your premise, that's the be-all, end-all. It's true that fiber can take almost unlimited data, but if you don't have the electronics at either end, it's sort of irrelevant. So you could have a massive cement pipe into your house, but if you have 2 toilets, 2 sinks, and a shower, you got an awful big pipe that still can only use so much water at any given point in time. Shaw uses what we call a hybrid fiber coax system. Fiber is really useful to carry big amounts of data between large spaces, but the pink cable into your house is able to carry 1 gigabit of data. It's a very robust pipe. So the issue for places like Rossland Trail, Warfield, Castlegar was not what was in the city. Lots of fiber in the city. Castlegar's got lots of fiber in the city. It's that it wasn't connected to anything to take the traffic out or bring the traffic in. Now, Shaw's connected to everything. So now the connection is seamless. But the pink cable that goes into your house is perfectly fine to bring that into your house. So more fiber doesn't necessarily mean more data if you don't have the electronics that will manage it. So Shaw's always had the distribution in Rossland. It didn't have the fiber connection that takes it out and all the way back to Calgary. It would have to go to the head end and then get shot up by microwave, which is very limited. So that was the issue. So now those businesses that are saying, well, I need to have good internet speeds and I need to have dependable internet speeds, certainly Shaw, and other companies will provide it as well, but Shaw is here now, will be able to provide it. The stuff that's up on the poles has always been good. It's now connected, and that's the difference. But it took 3 years and $9 million to build that connection all the way back, but now it's done.
So that can service residences throughout
Because we're already there. You see, and this is the thing is, other cities have built fiber networks that start at this side of Main Street and end at this side of Main Street. They're not connected to anything. When you have that pink cable from Shaw, or quite frankly, from TELUS, it's already connected to all the services. Fiber is just the pipe. But it's connected to the billing system and the service trucks and the call center and the broadcaster and the internet service provider. So fiber is simply the pipe. To have fiber in a community that's not connected to any services, when TELUS has got fiber running down the street, we've got fiber running down the street that's connected to the services, that's the difference. So now, if a business is here and needs better services, certainly we could provide it. Like I say, there may be others. But more importantly, from an economic development standpoint, if you're looking to attract creative industries or industries where they want more of a small town lifestyle, now you can say whatever your internet needs are, it's that Rossland can deliver, or the West Kootenays can deliver.
Councilor Hoss.
Thanks for coming to present to us. So I heard you say that in the near future you will be providing 250 megabyte download. Is that in spring of 2014? Is that? or when is
Yeah,
that?
I wouldn't, I would say so. We have two issues that we have to do. There's a little bit of network stuff that we still have to do, but the other thing, quite frankly, is we have an older billing system, and we have to input codes that will allow people that you're ordering from to know that those services are available. So that's the work that's being done literally as we speak. So I would imagine that the 250 would be available in spring of 2014, sort of around the same time as we launched the phone.
Okay. Now this, I probably will get a bit of a biased answer, but that's fine. I'm sure that you're aware that Rossland is participating with the CBBC program, and I guess I'd just like your opinion on whether that's necessary or not.
Well, I mean, I think, I think that lots of communities over the last several years have been recognizing that broadband is becoming as important a utility as the others. I mean, it used to be if you got a school, you got a hospital. Moment, then we'll move there. But now it's what's your telecommunications, what's your so certainly it is something that people expect when they live here, and certainly if you're trying to attract people here. And I guess I would answer, I mean, obviously, I think, you know, communities are obviously free to make investments wherever they can get a return, wherever they can provide services for ratepayers, attract businesses. I guess the question would be that if you've got at least one $9 billion company providing those services in the region, and probably the other player will be doing a similar thing, what would the third entity do that doesn't actually have any services? You know, what would they be able to do that would be different? And how would they service it? I mean, one of the things is, if the internet goes down at 2 a.m. with Shaw, you call Shaw, you get the Kelowna call center. If it's some other entity, do they have a call center? If they have a call center, do they have 24/7 staff? Who comes and does the fiber splice to reconnect the fiber? I mean, those are all the types of things that I think you have to take a look at. If I would say, if I were a ratepayer in a community that didn't have broadband, and the only way I thought we could get broadband is for the company to make, or the community to make an investment with a sort of a quasi-public body like the CBT or some other, and they could show me that they've also got the services that would, because it's not just the connection, but this is where the TV would come from, then I would say yes. If there is already the services in place, then I'm not sure that you get the same result, because I'm not sure what would be, other than competing, which is fine, competition is great, but if you've got two major companies already providing services and competing very hard with each other, you know, I'm not sure what would be what you'd get if you had a third entity who's not in the business of running, you know, a fiber network and in the that would be my opinion. But I do know that you know, Creston's having the same conversation, Nelson's having the same conversation. But I would also say that this is a conversation that's happened in different forms since 1999 in the Kootenays, and there's an awful lot of fiber that's been built that's not very active right now. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you answering that.
But I would also say one other thing, because competition is important, is, okay, this Jeff guy and Greg guy from Shaw came here in the beginning of February. Well, let's talk to our businesses, let's talk to our residents in June. And let's see what's happening in the community. Are those services there? Are people finding those services? Because, you know, nothing spurs competition like competitors. So, I mean, that would be my other answer.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Thatcher.
Have you signed up many businesses in Rossland for this broadband?
Well, we've just started marketing it. So in terms, I mean, we have lots of customers in Rossland. Yeah. I couldn't tell you how many are, say, have gone from, you know, the lowest broadband to, say, broadband 50. Yeah. So I wouldn't be able to tell you that. But I think, you know, businesses will be seeing more marketing communications, more direct mail, those types of things, making them aware. And quite often, you know, when you're, especially businesses, you're busy just trying to make payroll and do everything else, that it sometimes takes several nudges before you realize that those services are available. And not all businesses need them. Mm-hmm. You know, the barber shop needs a point of sale, and, you know, maybe the their TV cable. They don't necessarily need broadband 50. But other businesses, law firms, chartered accountant firms, offices that do a lot of that type of work, you know, you will probably see them taking up that service over the next few months.
A big, yeah, to add on to that, a big part of business services is definitely the phone. And you look at any size office with more than 5 or 6 phones, you're looking at building in PBX systems that can multi-line hunt. They can ring on different phones at different times. You can transfer to different numbers. So our ability to not be able to offer phone up until down the road here, I think it's been a limiter on that. I think our competition being able to offer hosted services, different phone services, has certainly been an advantage for them. And so we couple really the strong broadband internet connection along with the hosted phone. And I used to be an IT guy and go into companies and put a PBX system in, and it would be thousands and thousands of dollars to pay for the equipment itself and for me to set it up for them. Where now it's just a hosted thing, similar to back in the day when websites first started coming up. You had to build your own websites right from scratch and know how to code, where now you can just go on and type into a form and you can build a website out of that and have it hosted by any company that's out there.
And I think you'll find that just like people, businesses like to bundle. So when they're ready to look at their phone system, then they can say, well, what will you do for me on broadband? And you'll find, that sort of bundling opportunity. So those types of things. But they are certainly the key message is that the work is all done now. We're doing the final coding, but the stuff is all there and the connection's there. So that's, I think, what we certainly wanted to make sure that people were aware of. Because we're certainly aware that this conversation is going on, and we welcome competition, but we certainly want to make sure that it's filling a need rather than replicating a need.
So you mentioned your download speeds. What are your upload speeds comparable? You talk about you said 10, 25, 50, 100, 250.
Yeah, it's lower. There's definitely a lot more down traffic than up, and based on the business packages or even residential packages for that matter, it goes up considerably each step of the way you go up and under different packages.
And again, that's often where the sort of specialized solutions are critical, but most people, it's, they want to download an HD movie. They want to, it's the stuff they want to bring down that is really the big data, not the email with a picture of the grandson scoring the goal. That's not really the big data thing, so.
We do have a couple of businesses in town that would be interested in larger.
Yeah, typically VPN is a wanted service for a medium-sized company where you have employees that can work from home or work abroad and connect into the network. So VPN traditionally doesn't take up a lot of bandwidth because it's usually a communication of email back and forth or going into a database that's hosted on the other side. So the information's just flowing across. It's not huge files going across, but it's certainly scalable. It's scalable right from residential packages all the way through to, like we said, the direct fiber connections that are getting to hundreds of dollars a month. There's different options on that.
I think it would be interesting for us just to see a price breakdown when you can provide that information. So
Sure.
For a residential person. So from what I'm hearing tonight, it's like if I were to call you up tomorrow and say I want 100 in my house in Lower Roslyn, I could get that.
Depending on where you are, yes.
Okay, well, I'm in Lower
yeah.
Roslyn. I'm at the far end of town. Can
Yeah.
I get it tomorrow?
Is it coded? Might not be coded in yet. Again, we have to go. It's sort of hard to describe, but it has to go sort of almost neighborhood by neighborhood to get it coded in. There are things called nodes where the fiber comes in, and then the coax comes out to everybody's house, and so it's just a laborious. We have an older system.
Do you sort of have a little map, a grid of town that says what areas you've lit up?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
far,
It's different areas, absolutely.
But I mean,
you
it's
can see that?
And we
imminent.
consider this,
Yeah.
the West Kootenays is in terms of billing, we don't offer anything different from Castlegar to what we'd offer here. So it's one area, and so we've got the upgrades all done to be able to have those speeds and offer those speeds, but we have to change our whole billing system in the back end to be able to open it up. So if anybody does call in and they get somebody either in Kelowna or Calgary on the phone, they know that it's available in this area. So huge, large communication piece.
And I think when you're talking about competition, which I hope remains robust, and you hear it said, well, the internet, that's the generational lifestyle of, a year and a half or so. So it takes ongoing, constant reinvestment in areas. I mean, we're kind of a small rural community. We don't want you coming in and sort of, getting us all spiffed up right now and then leaving, you know.
Well, no, that's,
And, you know,
yeah.
to continue to upgrade and continue to enhance the services that people here want.
We've done, there's all the work that I described. We also purchased nanofiber, which was based out of the East Kootenays, and we actually did a fiber swap with CBT as part of that deal.
Mhm.
So, we're fully sort of invested in terms of upgrading the network, right up and down, and also up the Columbia Valley as well, because of course, you've got Sparwood and Cranbrook, Fernie, but you've also got Canal Flats, you've got Invermere and Windermere. So, we're fully invested, and we have to. Shaw Go Wi-Fi is, tens of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment, and we're not charging anyone for it. It's because competition's, meaning we need to provide something additional in the marketplace. So I think you'll find that making that type of investment in the East and West Kootenays is specifically to answer to that challenge. And we have all our staff live here and work here, so you'll see lots of blue trucks.
Great. Okay, thank you. Just to remind me, you said the voice over internet for telephone would be this spring, 2014?
Yes, and it's real phone. It's not VoIP phone. So, and again, that's a terminology.
Sort of a real phone too.
It is, but the difference is we are a Canadian local exchange carrier, so we are a phone company like Bell and like TELUS. Vonage is your phone connected up to the World Wide Web. So one of the differences, and there's nothing wrong with that, it's just a different type of service. So again, ours all goes through our network and then hits switches like TELUS does, like Bell does. So for instance, we contribute to Local 911, and we are Enhanced 911 as a Canadian local exchange carrier. We're required to provide that. So when you call 911 as a Shaw phone customer in Rossland, you get wherever your emergency communication center is. If you call on VoIP, you'll get 911, but it might be Brampton, Ontario, because it's not. It just goes out in the internet. So it's not a bad service. It's just a different service. But we're a straight phone company, and that's why we're able to provide business service. The other thing with providing phone is you can imagine if you've got one line coming into Rossland and one line going out. If someone knocks a telephone pole over near Warfield, well, now your phone's out. But you can't. With 911, you can't do that. So we have built a bunch of redundancy, as we call it. So if that telephone pole gets knocked over, switches happen and everything carries on. And that's just like when the lights flutter in a windstorm, and that's a substation switching over. So in order to be able to provide phone, we've also had to invest in that kind of redundancy to ensure that the network doesn't go down, because people have to be able to get 911.
Okay, great, thank you. Oh, one more question?
Okay, so I live on the edge of Rossland, and I'm a Shaw customer with my internet. I'm only paying for 20 right now because I can only get, generally it's about 4 or 5 Mbps, and that's it. So now, are you saying that this is already connected to the higher capacity now? When does it get to a point so that each house, I guess, actually has that measurable capacity change?
Well, I'll let Greg answer that in terms of the
Jeff
node
talked a
saturation.
lot about the fiber coming out here and having to switch out the old equipment. So what we've done is split up a whole bunch of, we have everybody in a certain neighborhood would connect to a node, it's called, then that feeds back into the head end, and so we only had so many nodes that were throwing all information back into the head end to go up to the microwave signal. Now, since we've got the fiber hooked up through the fall, we've almost tripled the node capacity, and we've worked our way through and coming up. So certainly there's still work to be done, but we're in a spot now where I'd confidently say within 2 months we're going to have all of our nodes split, upgraded, have the packaging corrected. So if you order broadband 25 or broadband 50, you're going to be able to get to that. It's a bit of a misnomer. It's if you have a broadband 100 connection, you're still going out with the World Wide Web, and there's certain limitations to where you're connecting to. And if there's 1.5 million people connecting to Yahoo, for example, you're only going to get so much. But it's just from that standpoint. But
right. So when you're doing a speed test, though, it's that that prescribed little data package that
Yeah.
communicating back, so that's.
Yeah, we try to, whenever we do speed tests with customers to troubleshoot your at-home connection, we try to keep it on our network so you can see where it is, and then we'll go even a step further, and if there's certain sites that you go to, we'll do a test to see kind of where it's bogging down, and, you know, if it's on our network or off. And traditionally, a lot of the sites, and I know you don't see as much now as you maybe saw it 6-7 years ago, but certain sites would just get bogged down, and they, you know, Google had to build to where they have huge server farms all over the place to handle the requests that were coming in all the time, so.
Okay. So my upload speeds are generally around 2.5 megabits per second. And so it's kind of funny because it's almost, you know, almost the same as my download sometimes. But you had said that you don't know how the increments, you know, for the upload speeds, how they're...
On the residential side,
but-
the residential side, we stayed at 2.5, I think, all through our packages.
Right. I'm just wondering what your maximum would be that you'll allow.
Well, I think on the residential side, it stays at 2.5 right now. We're in the midst of going through and kind of retooling our packages overall to see what that need is for upstream, because it's certainly over the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen more of a prevalence of the need for more upstream versus the downstream of the past. So you'll see them balance out more. When you go to business packages, they offer 5 megabit upstreams to 10 megabit upstreams to a 25 megabit upstream, depending on what package you want to go and what your needs are.
Okay, so do you know if the broadband 250, would that be then the 25
I think it goes to 5 megabits up.
already?
Yeah. And that. But that's something I think we've had to take a deep, hard look at to see where that's going in the future. And I think that, you know, I can't say confidently what our packages are going to be tomorrow, but I think the long-term plan is that we obviously have to balance that out a bit better and offer more upstream.
Yeah, okay, so sort of what the market demands, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, and it's you know, high def cameras, you know, a few years ago was, you know, only the fancy photographers. Well, now every iPhone, everything's got an HD camera. That's why some people have trouble texting pictures, is because the data pack for an HD picture was so heavy. So it's how the customers are making use of it, that is, and the products that are available that happen so quickly it took us how many years to just run a fiber line, let alone all the electronics that are attached in Castlegar, which then have to be attached to electronics in Calgary. So, you know, every time, you know, we try to catch up with the way customers use it, it's $750 million a year, and it's not for getting new customers, it's just trying to keep the network alive. Everybody wants HD, you know, and everyone wants their soccer from England, and all of that does take up space, you know, all of that's bandwidth, and so it's constantly having to retool the network in order to be able to deliver that all the way down the line. And the issue with the West Kootenays was it was never connected. So as we did things in Calgary or we did things in Vancouver, we couldn't do them here because there was no connection. Now there's a connection which allows us to be able to provide all those things, but we still have to do all that tinkering, if you will, with the network stuff. You know, I mean, I'm not the one to talk to, my VCR still flashes 12, but, you know, you still have to retinker all that stuff to then be able to do all those little things that happen after you hit enter or hit send.
Great, thank you. Any more questions?
No.
Thank you so much for coming, we really appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure, thank you for
Thank you.
all the time. Tracy, like I say, does have my contact information, so we'd be happy to follow up with individual issues or, again, questions that come up through other presentations. So.
Thanks
Great.
so much.
Thanks
Thanks
a lot.
very much.
Sure, it's awesome.
Yeah, take care.
Does our next delegation have a PowerPoint? Stay right here. Okay, so delegation from Red Mountain Racers.
Exactly. Talking about it.
Thank you.
Tell me when you're good to go in the dark. The focus came out?
All night.
Yeah, we got
I'm sorry, my eyesight is so bad,
Was that from Blurry?
I thought that was Shaw Cable.
Was it Blurry?
It was.
Okay, thank you.
Is that better?
Oh, I thought it was just my angle. There you go.
Yeah.
No, it was,
I thought my glasses were
because
dirty.
it's Blurry on, even the one we got in the package, right?
Yeah.
It was Blurry too.
Oh, I didn't even have to read that.
Hey, well, good
Well,
evening,
yeah.
Your Worship and Council, staff. Thank you very much for allowing us to present this evening. First, I'd like to start with a couple of introductions. To my left is John Stevens, past president of the Red Mountain Racers and one of our Red Mountain Racer alumni and former Olympian. We also have a number of Red Mountain Racer executives in the audience. We have Darrell Inns, Bernie Hoffman, we have Linda Schultz, we have our head coach and program director Phil Patterson, we have our fifth coach Michael Sadiak, and Eric Colossus is here as a fifth technical delegate, and Howard Katzhoff is also here. So on that note, and as I think everyone knows, Christine Anderson, I'm the current president of the Red Mountain Racers. And we're going to start with a little brief background from John Stevens.
So the concept of a training facility actually started back in about 1998 when the current executive that time had really thought, how do we get our local kids to get more training in? Because as the world of sports had started going, that your kids are getting out more and more and more training before season and after season, and we had a limited season here. So they found the kids were always being sent away, and at that time they thought, how can we build our program around here and get a facility started so the kids can train here. The idea then grew a little bit, well, we could bring in a lot of other people into the area to train as well to help the facility out. So that idea got tossed around for several years, and about 2003 they went out and actually put together a feasibility estimate, started when the concept of that, asking for money and getting one put together. And I think it was 2005 the feasibility estimate, the first one, went out for a training center. And it was mainly, at that time, focusing on the idea of ski racing, because that's who the executive was at that time, and trying to get a facility on Red Mountain that our kids could train at, and bring in other people from other clubs to train here as well. And that was sort of the main focus back then of a training facility. It wasn't just snowmaking, it also involved timing for running events that's a little more easier to run. So we're not, currently we constantly are checking wires up and down Red Mountain for our training to make sure they're ready to go, and this was involving a whole new facility for timing and a building for doing timing, so we could run multiple events on the mountain. So, Phil.
And now we're going to ask our head coach, Phil Patterson, just to say a couple words.
Yeah, I'm just going to touch on what I've experienced as a coach throughout Western Canada, and even as an athlete growing up in the East. We made, as an athlete in the early 80s, we used to make trips out to Whistler, Breckenridge, Colorado, trips into Quebec to find that early season training, which really was 100% snowmaking in a location that had the altitude or the temperatures to provide the good snowmaking conditions. And generally those resorts are free of public at that point. There's such a demand for, well, I guess what I should start that with is, our governing body has gone through some studies and figured out that to be competitive nationally and internationally, an athlete aged 14 to 18, they suggest, should have 30 to 35 days of training prior to what we call, opening day normal winter. Above 18, their suggestions are approximately 50 days, and that's what puts us into a competitive mode with Australians, Americans. So to get those 35 days, let's say for a 14 to 18-year-old, is a challenge. There aren't that many facilities in Canada or United States. We see teams going to Europe, South America in the real off-season in the summer to try to bump up those numbers. But ideally, if they didn't have to fly to New Zealand or Chile, they would like to spend their time in Canada, reduce costs. So then mid-November, late October, when we start seeing demand at places like Panorama, Nakiska, Apex, a little bit in Banff, a little bit in Jasper as well. There isn't enough facilities out there, so lanes are full of athletes. For just an example, this year when we arrived at Panorama, good training, good conditions, but so crowded that one team from Edmonton left on day 2. There wasn't enough room to do the work, and really they had nowhere to go. There were teams at Panorama from Banff where Norquay was open, yet there's such a demand at Norquay that they decided to go to Panorama. So I guess I'm just trying to explain that there is a demand. There are there's more skiers than slope available. So having having an area here wouldn't just benefit our local athletes. There would be benefit to the province, to the country, and even south of the line. You would see for sure Washington, Idaho, Oregon teams looking for training up here as well. And to the local racers, the obvious benefit there is instead of going and spending upwards of $150 a day to accommodate, transport them to Panorama, feed them, lift tickets, we would be here having those costs probably of the local athletes. But it is part of our sport. It's not, you're not really able to compete unless those early season days are put in. And on another side note, that snowmaking, even on a good snow year here at Red, would provide us with a consistent snow texture base that if we wanted to host a race in January or February, there's no risk of going through our natural snowpack and having problems with a unsafe or unfair race. You know, there'd be that initial layer that was laid down that would guarantee good racing conditions, which would also put us up higher on the list when they're looking at which venues in the country or which venues in BC should there be a race like the national championships or a provincials or a westerns or even a NORAM again like we used to have, even World Cup like we used to have.
Thank you. So I'll just start into the PowerPoint here now. And Tracy, thanks for setting this up for us. So just to reiterate what we're proposing, the Red Mountain Racers are seeking to raise approximately $2.1 million to fund the development of an athletes training center at Red Mountain Resort. The invested funds would go towards snowmaking and the purchase of the necessary equipment to operate 10 training lanes and a terrain park at Red. This is a photo taken on the glacier in Whistler, and this just gives you an idea of a typical training facility where there are a multitude of gates and lanes running on a very pretty limited space. In fact, when our team was training in France this fall, I knew my daughter said the first time down the course she was a little confused because there were so many gates, she wasn't sure which ones she should be targeting. So as far as opportunities, we have an existing internationally recognized venue. We have fully homologated race courses. We have the opportunity to build on our existing attributes, including our existing race culture, the lodge, the lifts, the reservoir, the academy. Red Mountain Racers have a great deal of history and experience with both training and hosting events. Red Mountain is the site of the first World Cup race ever held in Canada, and this is definitely an opportunity for local economic development during very low tourism months, and the snowmaking would also present the opportunity for pre-season drought protection and a guaranteed opening day for the resort, and which is a huge benefit to the resort, the accommodators, and the merchants in town. Our lift systems are already in place, and the demand most definitely exists for racers who currently travel the United States, Europe, British Columbia, and Alberta to find early training facilities, as Phil mentioned. At this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Eric Colossus, who is a technical delegate and has worked in the Olympics and various events around the world. And turn it over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Christine. So I'm here in the capacity of a technical delegate for the International Ski Federation. What is a technical delegate? A technical delegate is the highest ranked official at a competition assigned by the FIS, the International Ski Federation, and the TD is responsible for making sure the rules of the competition are held and that the courses are to spec. And I've worked at the Olympics, World Championships, I've officiated multiple World Cups around the world. I'm a freestyle technical delegate, and freestyle includes slopestyle, ski cross, moguls and aerials. And I'm here to confirm that the venue that we have here at Red Mountain is absolutely fantastic. The sites are excellent. The slopes and the variety of terrain that we have that will be covered by the snowmaking can accommodate all these other disciplines. We've got a few slides to go through here. So slopestyle, if you have been watching the Olympics, the newest discipline in both snowboard and ski. We've got an existing terrain park that is ideal for training. The course is a little short for a World Cup, but for training purposes, early season, it's just what the athletes are looking for, so they can practice their skills. And we've got a fantastic flat area where we can actually put an airbag in there, because airbag training is key for slopestyle and for half-pipe as well. So the site is excellent. Half-pipe for ski and snowboard as well. And moving on, boardercross. Well, I call it boardercross because I was the pioneer that helped get the discipline in the Olympics. In my prior life, I was promoting the sport of snowboard cross, then border cross, and skier cross. So this discipline is on fire, and we've got another location that's ideal for training for a great start and some great features that the athletes are looking for. Of course, moguls. We're going to do a Mogul Mania at the mountain again this winter. We're talking about it because of the success of the Canadian team, and there aren't many early season mogul training facilities that exist out there, and we've got a great site. There's a map later on that will show where everything's located. And finally, aerials. And then parallel giant slalom, the next slide, is a Olympic discipline as well, and it's basically alpine skiing with a snowboard, side by side. So this is an aerial shot of Red, the T-bar slope, and it outlines where moguls, half-pipe, slopestyle on the existing terrain park, aerials on a jump that's already exists there, and then the ski cross, snowboard cross can be built to spec, to World Cup specifications that complements the alpine ski racing that would happen on the runs as identified. And then the parallel giant slalom would simply be held as needed on the alpine courses. So it's absolutely amazing what we have here. I've traveled all around the world, and there are a few places that offer everything in an amphitheater, close to the lodging, close to the day lodge, close to town, close to the grocery store and the restaurants that the athletes and the teams can take advantage of.
And another thing about this particular slide, it gives you an idea, and it's hard, I can see on the screen very clearly, but it's difficult to see up there, but this air photo was actually taken at the time when we were hosting a FIS race. So there actually are two races going on simultaneously, which is an incredibly unique situation for any venue, and one of the things that we have repeatedly received amazing feedback about from athletes and parents and coaches that come here, because for coaches, they're close to both of their athletes. If they have a male and a female athlete competing, there's just numerous advantages, and to be able to see all of this from the lodge is pretty outstanding. And the image also gives you an idea of where all of the race training lanes would go in relation to, and how it would all fit together, even with all these different disciplines.
So, Chris, are the race lanes on the T-bar and on the face of red?
Yes.
Would it be the
Yeah,
whole gamut?
it would be the T-bar and back trail and the face.
And if I could, so in the pre-season, does that mean prior to opening for the public? So
Yes.
there's,
So I think, Phil sort of touched on some of the Red Mountain Race benefits in his discussion earlier, and so did Don, but providing an early season venue for our local racers and for academy students without additional travel expense, phenomenal. Guaranteed training space for local athletes, and as Phil said, this sort of facility is needed in order to grow and compete and produce better athletes. It's a definite opportunity for a revenue source for the Red Mountain Racers, which allows the racers to offer lower program fees and ensures that the programs are accessible to all. Just like to talk a little bit about the economic impact of the proposal. We've estimated that the Athletes Training Center would create in the neighborhood of 40 jobs annually. It would expand and maintain existing jobs. It would be able to assist in the retention and expansion of some of our school programs through the growth of the academies. One of our limiting factors with our academy currently is the fact that we don't have early season training. So to compete against academies such as Burke Academy in the East, which has a hill available with early season training, this would be a huge benefit to us in that regard. So through the expansion of the academies, we could have additional teaching jobs created as well. The accommodation sector would most definitely benefit from pre- and post-season training. November and early April are certainly very quiet times in our town. In addition, the race hosting that we could do as a result of having snowmaking. An additional benefit was we just had a race here this past weekend which brought approximately between 300 and 400 people to town for 4 days. Certainly nice for not only our accommodators but our downtown businesses to have that additional influx of people. Snowmaking would also guarantee the opening of the resort at Christmas, which offers stability to all of our tourist-dependent businesses in Rossland, and it would assist in the creation of a sustainable economy for the city of Rossland in general. Pre- and post-season training will bring approximately 5,000 people to Rossland during the shoulder season. This is estimated to translate into over $800,000 entering our community during those months. This is a graph that we created with the assistance of Tourism Rossland, and what it shows is the blue indicates the what we typically realize in the accommodation sector for the months of April and November. The green is the opportunity that exists, and that to me is a pretty nice number to look at, and a pretty exciting opportunity to fill some beds and generate some income.
So Christine, when you say capacity based on our best month ever, that's on actual best month ever?
Yes.
So that's basically the resort at full throttle,
Well,
Christmas holiday kind of thing?
Yeah, it's all of our accommodations, not
Yeah.
just resort
Right.
accommodators, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
With the help of Tourism BC, we were able to calculate that each 4-day race series held in Rossland brings approximately $450,000 to our community. And this year in January, due to a low snowpack, we had to cancel a 5th race, a series, and move it to Panorama. And it's not that Panorama has more snow than we do, they just have snowmaking, and we're able to ensure a race course that offered a fair and safe course for all the athletes. The loss of that race, which was a 4-day race, which means that teams are here generally for 6 days because they come for usually at least 2 days of training prior to the race, means our community lost approximately $450,000 in revenues. So as we've been looking at fundraising, for this Alpine Training Center, we've been looking at opportunities for partnerships with both funding partnerships and fundraising partnerships. And so this is a list of potential partnership opportunities that exist, including the Red Mountain Academies, the Resort, the City of Rossland, Lower Columbia Initiatives, Rossland Sustainability Commission, Seven Summits Center for Learning, Tech Resources Limited, Southern Interior Development Initiatives Trust, Columbia Basin Trust, Community Futures of Greater Trail, Alpine Canada, BC Alpine, Canadian Freestyle Ski Association, Canadian Snowboard Federation, Ski Cross Canada, Tourism BC, Kootenay Rockies Tourism, Tourism Rossland, Rossland Chamber of Commerce, Canada West Ski Area Association. I'm sure as we're delving into this, we'll come up with additional opportunities, but this is just an initial list. Most of these, of the groups listed, we have already entered into initial conversations with. This is just a quick list of some of the letters of support that we have. I have included them in the handout that I gave each of you tonight. So a little bit about snowmaking. One of the key things we'd just like to note is that it's no additives, it is just raw water. This image is of a snowmaking reservoir, and I've included this as when we have discussed some opportunities with staff. One of the things that has come up is the consideration that Council is giving currently to utilizing one of the reservoirs as a public swimming facility. And one of the options for the pumps for the snowmaking system is that you can have the pumps submersed under a pier which could be used as both a public swimming pier and a snowmaking pump station pier. The other option is to have a standalone small building, like similar size to the little Telus building out by the entrance to the resort, if anyone can picture that. It's sort of approximately the same size. So just a couple of different options, but as I say, I just threw this in as an image of a pier option. So this map just shows the areas that we are looking at for snowmaking. The only sort of disconnect on this particular map is that actually Back Trail and Faith would be connected with snowmaking, but on this map there's no pink connection there, but just gives you an idea of the area that would be covered.
What would be the point of having that little piece by Silver Monk?
You know, when the initial, and this map is from the initial review, I am honestly not entirely certain what was proposed for that, and as we've completed the update, we actually haven't included that little strip. So again, man-made snow is real snow. There are no additives. It's just raw water. Snowmaking returns over 80% of the water used back into the environment. The runoff associated with the annual spring thaw would not be significantly increased as a result of the creation of early season snow. And the existing stormwater management system and natural drainage patterns are already in place at Red Mountain. So, as far as project status, the Athletes Training Center is consistent with existing zoning and community plan designations. Hydrology assessment is complete, stormwater management plan and infrastructure are in place. The base area environmental assessment is complete, geotechnical assessment of Red Mountain is in hand, and there's a sufficient power supply which exists for the system. As you know, last year we came before council asking for support for the engineering review and assessment of water supply, and over the last year we have worked with our engineering group and the Techno-Alpine engineering crew, and all of their work has just recently been reviewed by ISL Engineering, and ISL has reviewed the water volumes for snowmaking and has confirmed that the capacity does exist within the existing Rossland reservoirs. Snowmaking is proposed during the time of year when water demands are at their lowest and fire danger ratings are also low. Snowmaking infrastructure would shut down completely if Star Gulch Reservoir water levels were to drop below an acceptable elevation as designated by your engineering firm. In summary, we have an existing highly regarded race organization, we have an existing internationally recognized venue, we have existing water storage, and by taking advantage of these three existing attributes, we feel confident we can bring over $1.5 million into this community annually. And at this point, the Red Mountain Racers Society would like to request that the City of Rossland, enter into a water use agreement with the Society for the purpose of establishing an athletes training facility at Red Mountain.
Thank you, all of you. Any questions? Councilor Ross?
Well, thank you all. That was a very professional presentation. And, you know, personally, I think this is a great idea. So, I do have a couple of questions. The April usage, I can understand that the November usage would be very high. What about the April usage?
Well, I can do a little bit. Sorry, Panorama currently does do postseason, and with the high demands in November, and there's some more studies being done for athletics, that there is time on task is time on task. So in those 50 days that I'm speaking of, for some it may be easier to start working on those 50 days early. It's when people start to choose their new boots and new skis,
Right.
equipment testing.
Okay.
It's starting to become more popular.
Okay.
So for sure there is more demand in November, but
Okay, thank you.
I've taken groups to Sunshine Village in May for the same thing.
Okay. I do have a question about temperature. Have you looked into whether our average temperatures at those times when you would be wanting to make snow? I mean, do we have it cold
Yes.
enough that you can do it?
Yes, both. It's one of the things that the Techno-Alpine engineering firm has reviewed, and just as a additional point, Techno-Alpine is the world's largest snowmaking company, and they, interestingly, one of the engineers we've been working with actually has a place here in Rossland, and it's one of the places he comes regularly, so we were kind of excited to hear that. We thought that was a good find.
Okay, great. That's good to hear. And then you're looking at a pretty tight time frame because you'd like to have this installed and ready to go by this fall.
We would ideally like to do that. We'd like to get as soon as possible some whether it's a memorandum of understanding or whether it's an actual agreement in place with the city as possible so that we can go and really seriously attack the fundraising. We have had some initial meetings with Columbia Basin Trust and CIDIT, and hoping to meet with the Western Diversification Group in the coming weeks. And we've had some really positive feedback so far, but we need to move forward with that ASAP.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Spear.
Thanks. Thank you, all of you, for your presentation. Excuse me. So, when you say that the engineer ISL reviewed it, and I'm pretty sure that I read that capacity of water would include full build-out of red and of redstone. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And there's a preference for Star Gulch over Ophir, or is there a reason? No.
No preference, and
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whichever.
Okay.
The only, I guess, there is no preference, but certainly as we've gone through the latest review, we have looked at piping from Star to the resort, and various things focusing more on that, but there is no preference overall.
Okay. So that was my next question. So the pipe, obviously there has to be piping from the reservoirs to, and so that water's pumped up to the mountain, or?
So it's pumped, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what, that slide that showed the little pier. And
yeah.
There's the 2 submersible pumps beneath, and that would pump water up to the resort, and then from there, there's a little, basically, could be in a container, could be, but there's a little pump station that would be installed at the resort itself, and then that lifts it to the fans.
Okay, and so that infrastructure would have to be built in that time frame that you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. What about noise from those machines, from those snowmaking machines? Is that an issue? Would it interrupt, the residences or the condos that are around there? They're not very noisy?
No, they're quite, yeah.
They're the giant fans. They're very quiet, as opposed to the old school blow the air and the water at the same time, and
right.
It is loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these ones
very
wouldn't
quiet. You can hardly hear them. Yeah.
Okay. Where would the facility, the actual training facility, be located on the mountain? The actual building.
The building, we've been reviewing different locations with Don and Howard, and there are a number of different thoughts we've had, including incorporating the actual pump house and training facility in one building, which could be down near the base of the Red Chair, or, but again, that's something we're just working with the resort on, the actual physical location that best fits with their master plan.
Okay, thank you. And just a comment, I remember in the 80s when we had was it World Cup? And, it was such a community building event. I was out there helping and volunteering, and it was just phenomenal. So I think that whole kind of community building around these kinds of potential races that could come would just be, or just a really positive, positive initiative for Rawson. So. Yeah, thank you. I think it's a very interesting initiative, and I hope personally that it works out.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you for putting together this, with so many people and so much information. Much appreciated. Now I have a few questions. The ski hills that have the pre-season training already, do they also have postseason in April, or I guess some of them probably are still open in April, post-public season, whatever that is for them?
I've attended some postseason both at Nakiska and at Panorama. I don't believe Apex does offer any.
Okay,
and then there's Sunshine Village, but that has nothing to do with snowmaking. That's just they're just open later than other resorts.
Okay, so there's potentially even a larger market for the April one, I guess, considering
there's less venues, for sure.
Yeah, okay, interesting. It says, you said that, Red Mountain Racers seeking to raise approximately 2.1 million to fund the development of this. So in order to open for November 14, how soon would that have to happen? Does that amount of money have to be raised by?
Well, it depends. This is also a feasible proposal, so, you know, we have broken it down into 3 chunks. So depending on how our fundraising goes, we can see how much we can take on in the first year. The initial cost, no matter what we end up doing, the baseline is about 1.3 million to get the first phase up and running. And there are a couple of long delivery items, which is why we sort of are in a hurry to get going on fundraising. The pumps are the long delivery items, and it's almost a 6-month order time. So we in discussing our timing with Dave Kennedy, the Techno-Alpine rep we've been dealing with, we would be looking at having to get our orders in by the end of April.
Okay. And then, how would, I guess, maybe not what is the ownership structure, but is this machine itself, it would be owned by Red Mountain Racers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And, so, but I'm assuming that over the year, I mean, Red Mountain would be able to use it for snowmaking that doesn't pertain specifically to competition?
So, I guess, first of all, you know, the way it's installed, the snowmaking would only be occurring on red. It wouldn't be something that would be of assistance to the rest of the resort. However, you know, having the snowmaking on red, a major benefit to the resort is the guaranteed opening at Christmas time, which, as we all know, is a very critical time for the resort and for all of our accommodators and downtown businesses. It's a pretty key period, economically speaking. The racers would enter into an operation and maintenance agreement, some kind of, we've been discussing that with the resort, last while, trying to figure out exactly what that looks like, and we're getting close to some final decisions on how that would fall out, but the racers are certainly not in the business of operating snowmaking equipment, but the resort has that skill set. So that's kind of how that structurally would look, Jody.
Okay, and so the society would also own the building?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Do you have any idea how many days you'd actually be running snowmaking? I guess it depends on
Depends on the
the actual
year.
snow or...
Yeah, it would totally, depend on the year. We, in all of our financial calculations, we've been looking at approximately 20 days for pre-season, and it's unlikely that we would need to have any snowmaking for post-season. It's just, and then there may be the odd time during the season if we're hosting a race, if for some reason we needed to augment, but generally speaking, I think it would probably be about a 20-day cycle.
Okay. Just something else, what Councillor Wallace said. What is the temperature, air temperature you do need for? Is it 32 or is it, what is the temperature?
Yeah, right around 0 is 0 to -2 are kind of ideal temperatures for snowmaking.
Okay, thank you. It's a very good presentation. I have a couple of questions too. I think it's a great program. It's very, very exciting, and I can see the benefit to the community a lot. The only real issue for council, as I see it, is the water. Right? So one of my questions was, you were anticipating that you would pay the normal rate for water, or are you anticipating the city donate the water, or who did?
Oh, I think that, you know, as mentioned in the submission that was in your agenda packages, there are a number of examples out there of various municipal water use agreements with athletes training centers that exist, and not just athletes training centers, but resorts in general. And we'd like to look at some of those agreements and negotiate something with the city, but it would not be, we couldn't make this happen if it were the standard rate.
But you're also not expecting it to be free either, are you?
No, but it would, but not, certainly not, nowhere near the standard rate. It just, we couldn't possibly
Something open
afford
to
it.
discussion. Okay. Also, I'm interested in you're talking about the 5,000 athletes. Now, is that 5,000 individual athletes who are coming for 3 days, or that's like 5,000 athlete
And,
visits?
It would be 5,000, and it would be a combination of athletes, coaches.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I'm looking at, like, we look at the capacity, like, we're looking at water demand for the population of 6,481 people, which is what they're using here as the ultimate build-out, according to the 2012 Liquid Waste Management Plan. Now, you know, the original plan was there were going to be 10,000 people up at Red, right, which we all don't think that's likely to happen, but what we have to plan our water usage for as a municipality is maximum use, the number of people that are there at any
And
time.
this would not be 5,000 at one time.
Okay, it would be 5,000 at one time, so it's
Spread over
5,000
that.
visitors spread over
Yeah.
the period of time that you're doing the training. And so when I look at these water calculations, I don't see that those additional people have been accounted for when they're looking at the water capacity, because they're just using the numbers, you know, the 6,481 number was, well, that one actually wasn't, well, I guess it was, okay, for 2031. That number didn't include a training facility. That was just what the population of the entire township of Roslyn, that includes Redstone, Red Mountain, and the conventional, you know, township. So now we're adding another bunch of people in there, and I'm wondering if that got incorporated into those calculations.
I would suggest you would need to discuss that with ISL, but I would also suggest that these people are filling beds that are part of that calculation, so they're...
Okay, but we've taken out the 10,000 people that are sort of the increased number of people who we were anticipating when we were going to
However,
see
these
this giant resort.
This is filling beds that exist today, so...
Right. I'm not as worried about the filling of the beds as I am whether the water calculations end up being correct, right? Because if that number should be changed because we're anticipating this other growth of people who are coming for this,
And,
you know,
I would defer to ISL.
yeah, that would be something that I think we would have to look at. What else? What else? I have another question there. And this is actually a question for staff, which you may just be able to tell me right now. But we talked about the existing stormwater management system at Red. And does the stormwater system out there connect to the sanitary sewer, or does it flow elsewhere? Elsewhere. Okay, that's great. Okay, and... Okay, no, that's great. I did have some of the same questions about the temperature and whether the things, you know, there's been a lot of work done by CBT about climate change and sort of what we're looking at here, more rain on snow events and that kind of thing that's going to make it harder for us to maintain, you know, I mean, having the snowmaking is what's going to keep us going, right? But on the other hand, if it does get a lot warmer and a lot more rain on snow, it's like that may be all we have of the mountain, and that's not particular. It's a big investment to make in sort of uncertain climatic, you know, times. So we have to be careful. To me, that's the risk is on the society and the resort for that, not the city, because the part here of having that, you know, the 100 days level, that if we get below that 100 days level, you're cut off regardless of how many people you have booked or whatever, because we have to keep the water for the town.
Absolutely. And
But
the
I think it's a
system-
fabulous idea. I really like the idea. It's great.
Thank you. Just to add to that, the system is it's a fully automated system, so it would, you know, as soon as that level, if it were to go down to that level, the system is a complete shutdown, and it's pretty amazing actually how the technology has come along.
Councillor Spearn, you have a question?
Yeah, I also had a couple of notes about the level of water and that risk as we move forward with climate change, and you know, the kind of the risk around the fact that, so you talk early season, you know, the reservoir can be depleted over the summer months when it's hot, et cetera, right? Not depleted, but it can be at its lowest levels. So it's just, I guess, I mean, I would do some math calculations, et cetera, and it seems like there's lots of water when we have the water in the reservoir. But as we move forward in time, I guess that was just some of the queries that I had within myself about, you know, the actual water capacity within the reservoirs. But certainly we have, between the two reservoirs, seemingly plenty of water when we're at an average year of rainfall and snow melt and all of that. So we just all have to keep taking the shuttle bus, so we're not driving our cars and putting the
Do you have any
Gs
other
into the environment.
Okay, so we appreciate this, and I think we'll get a staff report on this for our next meeting, which would be when we'd be probably able to make a decision. So,
Great.
okay, that'll be in 2 weeks.
I'd just like to thank you guys very much for allowing us to present tonight, and we really appreciate it.
Okay, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, Christine, if you need these for another presentation somewhere else, because I don't really need it.
It's all yours, my dear. But thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so moving along to unfinished business, we have correspondence from Mr. J. Gustafson regarding strategic plan for the West Kootenai Boundary Regional Hospital Board. Councillor Wallace, do you have some conversation for us on this?
Well, I can give you some ideas. I don't have any great insight. And I know that you deferred this to this meeting from the last meeting because I wasn't here. And I appreciate that. And, you know, my first response is perhaps we could invite Mr. Gustafson to come here and, you know, kind of explain exactly what the intention is. I can tell you that, and you read it in his discussion as well, but there is certainly divisiveness around the hospital district board, and there has been probably since before it amalgamated into what it is now. And I did tell you a couple of months ago there was a motion made at the hospital board meeting to request that the province kind of speed up the planning process for our area, which probably the whole board would have supported until the mover threw in the replacement of KBRH. At that point, you know, you lost half the table. And so I am concerned that's what this is about. I know that Castlegar and many representatives from that area would like to see a new hospital located in Castlegar, and that would be the regional hospital for the whole hospital district area. And, you know, certainly from our community's perspective, having KBRH sitting right there is pretty beneficial to us in many ways. And, you know, what the location of the other regional hospital in Nelson is very beneficial in many ways. So I don't really have, you know, that insight that you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, that one of the main points of discussion is that rural needs are very different than urban needs. And our health authorities move to centralize things and to try to reduce costs. It doesn't work very well in rural areas. We've got pretty extensive geography. We have people in remote areas, isolated areas, and their access to health care should be considered. So that would be my one big point. If we're going to answer, you know, what are our priorities? Well, the big one is that the Ministry of Health and our health authorities need to recognize the difference between our rural areas and our urban centers.
So is the point of this for us to have a letter go back to to him with our answers to these questions? Is that's what he wants?
Letterhead even.
Yeah, letterhead, but I mean, it's sort of interesting to me, because on the one hand, it looks like, he's putting together this report, and then I'm wondering what his connection is actually with Castlegar, 'cause
He's been hired by
he's been
Castlegar,
hired
as
by
far as I
Castlegar
understand.
to do this, as opposed to this being a board decision to hire somebody to look at this.
This
So
is
that's
not
sort of-
coming off of the hospital board.
Yeah, so this
Because
also sort of gives another
It
little
doesn't say what
odd,
it is.
Your worship, that would be correct.
yeah, it's a little
What?
odd bit to it, right?
Jim Gustafson
Yeah.
is the past CAO of the Central Kootenai
Right.
Regional District.
Well, I wrote, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I wrote some comments down because, last, it did come to us, and then we were appreciating that you would be here, maybe fill us in a bit. But I felt the same way, I made some general comments around, that we, as in, this is my opinion, that maybe we want to state, if we are going to answer these questions, firstly, I don't even know if we are, but that we support capital investments within the city of Trail, as it is the nearest community to Rawson, where we've got that significant mountain highway to get ourselves to the hospital in Trail, right? So it makes sense to have a hospital in Trail for Montrose and Beaver Valley and all of that, the south end, right? Just like you said, in the north end with Nelson. I mean, it's fine to centralize in Castlegar, meets the needs of Castlegar, but it certainly doesn't meet all of the tenants that go out the valley and up to Rawson and from Nelson same up to Castle, right? They're serviced by Castle. So it makes sense to have kind of a north and south facility, two facilities in my mind. We lost our own hospital, so we don't even have one anymore.
Well, let me just interrupt for 1 second. Maybe
Yeah.
what we should do is just go through these questions and just go around the room and just answer them, and then
Tracy could just take notes.
yeah, Tracy could take notes and put together the letter. Does that suit
Well,
everyone?
do you want to answer them? Like,
Well, yeah, I think, I believe that if there's an issue on the table, you do way better to put your views forward
Yeah.
than just say, oh, we're not gonna play in the sandbox, right? We should say what we believe is in the best interest of our community, so I support.
Well, I think maybe we should do that as kind of a very preliminary step for this council, because firstly, there's a few people missing, and secondly, maybe people didn't come prepared to do that. But I'm certainly willing to share. I mean, I wrote, a few more things down. Like I put upgrading the current hospital has been ongoing, and there has been a serious commitment made to that hospital by all kinds of volunteer, donations from, this area, right? So there's been a huge commitment from all the nearby communities through significant fundraising, I wrote.
Okay, so hold on, are you
So that's probably in the
answering
second
the
one.
questions? What, can we just go through, like, on question
Sure.
1, or
I
Councilor
kind of
Beaton?
answered the question.
Yeah.
So, myself, I prefer the idea of inviting Mr. Gustafson to come and speak to us. I don't know, I have too many questions about why this is happening and why it is in the way that it is. To have, a strategic plan, absolutely, we want to have that, but shouldn't that be a board-directed thing, and wouldn't it be the board doing that? You can hire a consultant, but it doesn't really seem, it sounds like it's something that's happening kind of on the periphery. And I'm not clear, and it doesn't sound like anybody here is really clear on that, and so I'm a little bit concerned about giving too much power, I guess, somewhere where kind of decentralizing the power of decision-making almost, and then to feed into that, I don't know if it's good, if I'm understanding the situation right.
Councilor Wallace, do you want to respond to that?
Well, the mandate of the Hospital District Board is very tight and clear. IH presents a capital budget and says, this is where we're putting money this year. After, they go through an extensive vetting process in order to get to those capital items. And then, basically, the hospital board has the authority to generate the 40% taxation of that list. That's about the extent of the mandate. And I know previously, Councillor Spear had said, well, does the hospital board ever do strategic planning? Well, no, because there's absolutely no authority over our operation and maintenance. All it is about collecting that 40% of that capital list. So
So this is like something that's out there, that's just this little, you know.
But is it meant to inform IH? Is that, I mean, is that?
Well, why would it be
so.
though? It should come from
No.
IH then. IH should be
Well,
saying
no.
to us, this is,
No, we're saying, he's asking all the communities involved here, what's
Yeah, but who
important
is
to
he?
you, well, he's hired by CalSTAR, right? But then he's gonna take this report and take it to IH, right? Is that?
That's what he said.
well, then all the communities could hire someone, right?
Well,
I
they
mean,
could,
why
but-
is it the CalSTAR, because they want a hospital, that that they're allowed to even like, why is this even in our package really right? Like, who is this guy? And honestly, if it's just someone who is
Yeah.
helping CalSTAR to reach their goals of, you know,
Well, that's what we
of
put
a
input
hospital
into it.
facility, it should come from IHU, like.
Councillor Thatcher.
Well, I think due to, you know, the geographical area of this, I think the two hospital system is way better than just one centralized hospital. The amount of money, donations that local people have put into the Trail Hospital is enormous. And, if that hospital needs upgrades, I think that's where the money should go to. And same with Nelson, it seems to have more serviceability with the two hospitals. I think here, we're getting dragged into the CalSTAR Trail fight of who placement
And
of a
we
new
side
hospital.
with Trail.
Yeah, well, why don't we just, I mean, if they were gonna say anything, then something along those lines, that we
Well-
support a facility being retained in Trail, be it a new hospital or a, an upgrade.
Well, I actually am liking Councillor Bloomy's suggestion that we get Mr. Gustafson here to talk some more, and then to give us a presentation, and then we can formulate our response from that, and we can see, and maybe we'll decide, wait a minute, we don't wanna be part of, we don't wanna get co-opted into somebody else's fight, but on the other hand, there may be something really valuable that our input would add to this. Just because it's always been done the way that you're saying the hospital board is operated, something like this may be a new approach, and it may get IH's attention, and there may be a benefit, and he's a well-respected, legitimate guy, right? He's not gonna say, oh, Roslyn said they want the hospital in Castlegar if we don't. So, do you wanna make a motion to invite him?
Well, it's actually.
You
already
go
here.
ahead, I'll second you.
Okay, I'm moving that we invite Mr.
Gustafson.
to speak to us and,
And see if he'll come. I know it's in the plan in here that he would come to councils in the fall, but I think it's more beneficial at this point in time to kind of understand what this process is about.
We'd like to hear from him before we put our response in. Okay, so you've seconded, all in favor?
Could I just say one more thing?
Oh,
Right.
okay, wait, yeah, discussion.
Well, the letter from Trail, right, I mean, they, you obviously are taking a strong stand against that, what they want as far as the capital program prepared by IHA, right? So, I mean, they've got the right idea in my mind, right, that, they're saying that, they don't need this Mr. Gustafson. They're saying this is what we want in Trail, in their letter, right, in the third paragraph.
Yeah, but that was also in response to a December 22nd letter, and I'm wondering, did we get that same letter? Because this thing we're looking at is
Yeah.
January 9th email, right? Or was,
Your worship, he's referring to the November 15, 2013, strategic initiative that was attached to the package.
Mhm.
That is
Yeah,
all
November
that we-
15th.
That is all that we have received.
okay.
Oh,
Okay, because so he talks about dated December 22nd, I was going, well, what was that? We didn't even see that, but, anyway, I don't think that really matters if we want to hear what he has to say. Stay open-minded about it, hear what he has to say, and then we can kick this around again. Anybody else want to speak to it? All in favor? Okay. All right. Moving on, we have our staff recommendation is that council extend the memorandum of understanding with the Rotary Club of Roslyn for a further 3 years, July 4th, 2017, with the condition that the Rotary Club submit a yearly report detailing revenue and expenses for each event hosted in the Miners Hall by the Rotary Club. Do I have a mover?
Ms. Bloomy, are you on the Rotary Club?
Everything else, not that.
I thought,
Okay.
I'll second it.
Councillor Thatcher moves it, and Councillor Thatcher, would you like to speak, and Councillor Wallace seconded.
The amount of money the club invested in the kitchen, I think it was a very substantial investment, so I feel that we should be able to extend this agreement.
Councillor Wallace?
I do agree. And the other piece of it is, the Rotary Club is such a support network for the community. You look through their usage, and they really extend to support the Internet Club at the school. They, what are some of the other ones on here? Like, it's not a lot of them having their own little
Club,
own little events. Their events are very much supportive of the community. So, I guess I did have a question, though, regarding, where did it go? So these numbers in the staff report, are you saying that they've already received a benefit of $2,304 of waived fees? That was the total in the staff report?
Yes.
Okay, which is quite minor in comparison to their investment. And we're going to extend this for another 3 years. That is what the motion is, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'm fine with it.
Okay, Councillor Spear?
So, yeah, I was just looking for clarification. So over the 3 years, it was $2,300? Is that correct?
Yeah.
So another 3 years, $2,300, which would bring it up to like $4,600 or something. Yeah, I actually put to extend it for 1 year, and the only reason why I did write that was that, we've done that with a whole bunch of other groups, right? Like we've said, we're not extending anything for, 3 years, no commitments for 3 years, when we were looking at all of our groups that we support financially and funding. So I don't know. I mean, I'm fine with it, but, it is revenue to the city, but they did do that big investment, I guess that's the trade-off, so I'm fine with it.
Councillor Lindley?
So I agreed that the investment of $30,000 in is, I think, is so much more significant than just the little that they would take out. And really, the other revenue that we get from the other groups who use the kitchen facilities, we wouldn't have if it weren't for the $30,000. So, that more than makes up for the little bit that they take out every year anyway. I kind of like the point that Councillor Spear made about the 3-year thing, being 1 year so as not to commit a next council. And the reason I say that is there might even be, I can't imagine anybody having this issue, but who knows, maybe there's an entirely different construct of agreement that next council could come up with to have with Rotary. That would be the only thing I would be thinking we'd be, limiting by doing this 3-year thing. But, yeah, I feel safe continuing on with the 3-year if there's no other appetite to change that to 1.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with the 3 years at all, because, for one thing, it won't be a complete other term for the next council, and we do enter into agreements all the time. And for us to, what we're doing is saying these little groups, we give them $4,000 or a $2,300 benefit or whatever, those are the ones we're going to hold to 1 year. All we're really doing is making more work for our hardworking volunteers, more work for our hardworking staff, for something it's very pro forma, right? There's very small amounts of money subject to it. I take it, again, it's the principle of the thing, but, I don't think it's that big a deal. For me, in the agreement, memorandum of understanding, point 5, which is on page 47, it says, the rental charges relating to activities of the Rotary Club of Roslyn, subject to a portion of the monies generated by the Rotary Club of Roslyn from such activities being reinvested back into the Roslyn Miners Hall. It's like, we're waiving it, but we're subjecting it to a portion of the monies. Well, a portion of the monies doesn't tell anybody anything. Are we saying, well, okay, we want 10% of whatever they generate? Are we saying 5%? Or are we saying, we've got in the letter it says that Rotary was willing to work with the RCAC about some of their improvement projects. And I'd actually just take that, either make that section clear or take it out, right? Because this doesn't tell you anything, subject to a portion of the monies. We now turn to Rotary and say, okay, the portion we're taking this year is 90% of what you brought in, you know, or 2%, you know, so, you know, I think, I would actually suggest we just take it out, but maybe staff has a view on that.
Your worship, I'd just like to look at it a little bit further and come back. I think what
Okay.
I'll do is, design a new agreement, and then I'll vet it through council before we sign
Okay,
it.
that sounds good. I just think when you
Okay.
look at something that's that vague, it's either make it
No, I
specific
agree.
Yeah,
or
take
get
it
rid of
out.
it, right?
I agree.
So we have a motion on the table to extend it for 3 years.
Could I say one more thing
Yes,
about the
of course.
agreement? Number 7, and maybe I'm just reading it wrong, says the length of the memorandum of understanding is not to exceed 5 years from the date of this agreement.
Yeah, but we were talking about 3 years.
Yeah, but it says not to exceed 5 years,
Right.
so that's fine.
3 years
Your
is
worship,
I don't get
those
it.
things would all be.
Yeah, tidied up.
Yeah, tidy up.
I'm just wondering, do we need that, that staff is going to revise this memorandum of understanding? Can we include that in that motion, just for clarity?
Sounds good. Okay, so with that little addition, are we going to vote on this? All in favor? Opposed? Passed. Okay, so now we go to our information items, and Councillor Spearn, do you have anything there you would like to speak about?
No.
Okay, Councillor Thatcher?
There's C.
Okay,
Well, yeah, the music.
Councillor Wallace?
B. Final
B.
response.
And Councillor Blumey? E. E. Okay, so we have B, C, and E. So we'll start with Councillor Wallace for B. That's
Okay.
the RDKB.
I'm just wondering whether any members of council are interested in the CIDIT RAC position, and if so, if they're looking for information. I know that, I believe we're past the date when the request was made to respond, but I know that the board hasn't discussed this yet. Just for a little bit of background, I mean, I actually fulfilled this role for a year in 2009, being a member of the Regional Advisory Committee. And really what that means is that you would receive any of the applications to CIDIT that were related to our area. And just respond with any knowledge you have of that organization that's applying, or you know, anything positive, anything potentially negative, that kind of thing. There's a fair amount of time commitment sitting alone in front of your computer, but
They stressed that. That's when I stopped being interested. I thought, no, I got enough reading.
Well, that's also why I
Yeah.
gave it up after the first
Yeah.
year.
How
because
much time did you spend doing it?
Underlined it.
I at that point in time, I mean, that was my first year on council, first year on regional district. I had a significant learning curve that I was working on, but I felt that I wasn't able to meet this obligation, because it kept going to the end of the line of my priority list. But what is important at that point in time was the intention was to get representation from this side of CIDIT onto the board.
Is there anybody there now? 'Cause didn't-
Grace McGregor is there.
And Gordon Rose stepped down,
Gordon
right?
Rose is stepping down, I believe, in April.
Yeah.
So we are looking for 2 members of the RAC.
I was sort of interested, but I was curious about how much additional reading it would be. I mean, is it at 50 pages a week more, or?
Oh, no, it's not to that level.
Yeah.
And we're going back a few years in my memory. So, I mean, it challenged me at that point in time, certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean,
But
it's
you were
all
doing the
relative, right?
RDKB as well, right?
Yeah.
So, but,
I mean, it's interesting reading, to know what initiatives are going on, certainly. But, yeah, so any members of council, if you're interested, please let me know. And if you have any questions, any other questions, let me know.
Okay, well, I might be interested. Okay, so C, that was
Me.
Thatcher.
The final report from that Donald Luxton and Associates is going to be presented at an open house at the museum on March 12th. The open house from 5 till 7:30, and the presentation is gonna be at 6.
Okay.
Thanks.
I was curious about that because I thought, do we as a council have interest in discussing that report? I mean, there were, I mean, it's a great report, right, but there were a lot of things in there that I thought that, you know, might be, interesting for us to discuss. But, I don't think anyone's prepared to do it tonight, right? Is there, maybe after that March?
Probably after the presentation,
Okay.
and that might be worth more of a committee of the whole.
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah. Could we add that as a committee of the whole after the March thing?
After
Okay, that'd be
financial
great.
plan. What day of the week is that, March
It's a
12th?
Wednesday, I think.
Okay, then. I'm never gonna get back to my.
Yeah.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, and 7 was Katrina Conroy, invitation.
Presentation at 6.
I just lost it.
That was the invitation from Katrina Conroy to meet.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm wondering, was this just sort of a general, hey, let's meet, or was there a specific, is there a conversation prior to this, or some kind of arrangement done prior to this, that there's an actual, specific topic or specific reason that we've been meeting with her? Or was this just, hey, she's making her rounds
Yeah.
and she'll be in the area kind of thing?
I think from the experience with Alex Adamanenko, and I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming that she set a date, we come, if we have questions, meet her,
Okay.
kind of, right? Kind of a meet and greet. and-
Well, I would just defer that to
But,
staff and see if there was anything else. that
Your
you-
worship, that is correct, that's exactly what it is.
Meet and
Okay.
greet.
I wasn't sure. Thanks.
Okay.
So we have to pick a date, or should we pick a date? Or is it, oh, it says with the mayor and council. Has he given,
Hasn't given me any indication. We could defer this and.
March 17th?
Yeah, the week of
Oh,
March
that's spring
17th
break.
to 20th. Is that spring break?
Mm-hmm.
It's St. Patty's Day.
So, maybe that
We
week.
could drink green
well,
beer.
Maybe suggest a different week, right? If that's spring, because Jill, you're usually gone, right?
Well, I'm not always gone, but I think that's her time, right? Like she said 17th, 20th, that's probably her days
Her
that
days.
she's available, so, I was just gonna look at the calendar. So the 17th is the,
Wednesday. No. 17th is a
Thursday?
Monday.
No.
Yeah.
17th
Your
is
worship, I would
Monday.
just ask, do we have a preference on day and time that I can go back to her?
17th.
Well, Thursday is out for me. I will be at a finance and a board meeting.
What day is it?
Anybody else have a preference? We said we have Thursdays knocked off.
It's kind of unfortunate we don't have a council meeting that week, because then we could just invite her to come to council.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. I like that idea.
yeah.
Mhm. That's
Well,
my best.
You guys pick, I'm not gonna commit, because I may not be here.
'Cause you may be gone anyway. Well, maybe that would be our first choice, if we could combine it with a council meeting either on the 10th or the 24th, if either of those days would work. I mean, she just threw that week out, that doesn't mean it's the only week she's potentially available. And then, other than that, not a Thursday. Does anybody have any other days that they know no? And we could just say not a Thursday, but any other day, and whoever's available could come. Are you out?
No, I know any day's fine.
Any day, okay. Okay, so our preference would be the 10th or the 24th, which are our council meetings, or any day that week except Thursday, and we'll just see if that works.
Well, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be the.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay. Okay, so, do we have a motion to receive all of those information items?
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Spearn, seconded by,
Your worship, can I just interrupt? I just want to let the council aware that the Columbia Basin Trust contribution agreement with the Youth Action Network for the 3D printer.
Oh, right,
I have
sorry.
asked for one amendment to that contract, and that is, something in the contract to speak to who the equipment belongs to, after Yan is completed.
okay.
Oh,
Okay, that's right, I'm sorry, I
Yeah,
forgot the
yeah,
late
okay.
additions before we,
Oh,
okay,
that's what you're-
so,
I was looking at the wrong one.
okay. All right, so with that little addition that you've put in there, does anybody have any other conversation about that Youth Action Network purchase of the 3D printer?
So who will become the owner of that after that?
City of Roslyn?
I was gonna
You
say
would-
the
I
Arts
would say it would
Council.
be-
Yeah.
it would
City
be
of
the
Roslin.
City of Roslin.
Yeah. I think that would be good. And then the other thing was the recommendation to approve the sculpture and location of Rusty.
Rusty.
I saw Rusty
I
in
like that
Castlegar.
sculpture.
Rusty's great,
It's one of my
really
favorites.
great. Okay, so
How big is
now,
Rusty?
Rusty's big,
Pretty big.
Rusty's, yeah.
No, bigger than that. Oh, no, he's taller than
You know,
that.
people are gonna climb on it, won't photo.
Check them out on the
What do you
weekend.
think, Darren? Where's it gonna go?
Right outside Harbor.
Right outside
Yep.
Harbor Street.
Yeah.
Kind of where the bench is now, where the bench moved, yeah. Yeah, I think that would be great.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're gonna get something in the ex hardware store building, right, like they're working on.
Yeah.
They look terrible right now.
Stores, they all
Yeah.
look-
Okay,
Very
so do we
posters.
have a motion to receive all our information items as listed? Karen, that's your...
Karen did that.
Well,
I did that.
didn't you?
Okay, everybody, all in favor?
I think you seconded that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, all in favor, we're done. Okay, so now we've got our waste collection service and rate bylaw. Staff recommendation is that we give first, second, and third readings to bylaw 2545 on February 11th, 2014, subject to any amendments made during the readings of the proposed bylaw. So now, as you recall, we have reviewed all this, and the major thing is that we're not doing a we're not doing a fall garbage pickup. And this enables us to bring the cost down a tiny bit, then raises it up a little bit for our contractor. Those are the big differences, as I recall. Do we have a mover?
So moved.
Okay, Councillor Wallace, seconder. Councillor Thatcher, discussion?
No.
Discussion? No,
Sorry,
okay.
that was a preempt.
That's okay. All in favor? All in favor, okay, thank you. And now I guess we are in members' reports.
Will we,
No? Well,
I was gonna ask, will we let our citizens know that we're only gonna do one of those by, newsletter or something?
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a newsletter.
I think in our spring cleanup that we always send out,
Yep,
I think we'll put it in bold letters that
Yeah.
there will be a fall one
yeah,
at that time, so.
okay. That's council decision. Okay, members' report.
Thank you.
Councillor Bloom.
Okay, so I,
Okay, don't take this personally. I have to excuse myself quickly.
So, the presentation today with regarding to the Shaw thing, obviously I have, quite a bit to explain and reiterate, but I think I'll have the opportunity in 2 weeks, or, well, I don't know, did they really ask for anything, is there going to be a report coming back to us at all on that? It was just sort of information,
They didn't,
right?
it was just information, they didn't ask for anything.
Right, okay. So I guess I'll try to just keep it short, but I really appreciate that Councillor Wallace, said, okay, I understand it's going to be biased, but when you can you explain whatever. Anyway, in that explanation about whether or not we should be doing the CBBC thing, definitely a lot of the assumptions that he spoke from, they just weren't correct, I mean, referring to if there's going to be somebody to call if the line breaks or something. Well, of course there's going to be, and with respect to laying the fiber, that's more than just laying the fiber, but you need the equipment at either end, and, of course that's the case. And, CBBC, they are in this to succeed at it, right? And they are backed by CBT, they're basically overseen by CBT. So, there has been a lot of work and thought and consideration and professionalism, and they do know what they're doing. So a lot of what he said actually doesn't really apply to the specific CBBC situation, and he wouldn't necessarily know that because he hasn't been part of the CBBC discussions, right, naturally. So I just wanted to point that out, that it wasn't it wasn't so much, I mean, I'm sure there was some bias in there in the sense of, you know, preference, obviously, and then from, you know, where he works, but there was also just misinformation, basically, in, or lack of knowledge of the CBBC situation. I also, just wanted to point out that, you know, CBBC and us, myself, you know, we're definitely thinking of this from the point of view of contributing to the community of Roslyn. And so the idea of Shaw improving the offerings in Roslyn is good. It's a very good thing. And in fact, what they referenced many times was investing in fiber in the West Kootenays and connectivity, and that was what they're indirectly referring to there, is the fiber trade, basically, between CBBC and Shaw. That's what enabled that to happen. So it is very much a partnership, and CBBC and Shaw working together to be able to connect the West Kootenays, and then CBBC was able to, you know, they got a lot more fiber also out of the deal, right? So it was mutually beneficial, and they're working together. And so, you know, I just don't want us to leave here tonight thinking that it's, you know, Shaw or CBBC, right? It's not a one or the other. We can have them all. I mean, CBBC, the offering is actually really very different from what Shaw has. And then when it, you know, comes a point to, you know, when it's all lit up and it comes a point to market that, it'll be our responsibility to market that difference. It really is a different product that CBBC is offering than what Shaw is offering. And so, you know, we don't have to see it as Shaw, CBBC, and, well, TELUS, I guess we could throw them in there. We're not pit against each other by any means. You know, ultimately, it's best for the community to have competition and to have choice. And ultimately, when it comes down to things, you know, they're basically filling different gaps. Another thing I wanted to point out is that when I was at UBCM and I was talking to a councillor at, in Port Coquitlam, I guess it is, the guys who have the city that has QNet, I think they call it. So they did a $5 million infrastructure build that has turned out wonderfully successful. And she warned me, she said, when this happens, you know, at the beginning, she said, watch it, because what we were expecting, and what definitely did happen, is that, you know, Shaw and TELUS and, you know, basically the incumbents did really step up their game, and they, you know, did it very wholeheartedly, and just, you know, be aware that that's going to happen and expect it. And, you know, I guess the way it was presented was more that it was a negative, but really I see it as it's good that they're stepping up their game. We want the city of Roslyn to have as much benefit from this process as possible, and this is kind of a side benefit.
Seems like one thing though is they're kind of, the potential could be that they reduce our target market, because there'll be people that we would be wanting to sell our broadband to, that they'll say, oh, well, I may as well just go with Shaw because it's easier, and we have kind of we have a very small market that we're targeting. So for us to make it make sense financially, and plus the fact that they can get all the people out beyond the interior
You're
corridor.
exactly right on that, but I think that the niche that CBBC can cover that Shaw wouldn't be able to, that can grow as, you know, as the value
competition.
Yeah, as the value grows, that market will grow also. But then also I think it's our responsibility to market to potential providers on our network, right? And so as that grows, that can grow so much wider than what Shaw could possibly put on there. And it could be such a value-added piece that ultimately that kind of takes over.
We're offering an
Initially,
open network, right?
Exactly.
Anybody can come on ours, where
Exactly.
they're just going to have their one slide.
Exactly, and that's such an entirely different product when it can, you know, really comes down to it, that ultimately that would, you know, kind of take over. That the benefit of that can't be duplicated by Shaw. So once that gets going, it just gets going, snowballing. But Shaw, on the other hand, that will make a difference initially, no doubt, with sort of the non-specific internet users, for sure. But, you know, we're not doing this because we wanna make $1 million off it. We're doing this to provide value to the community and, you know, and I mean, we want it to be cost effective, of course, but,
Can I,
go ahead.
no, I appreciate what you're saying, Jody, because, you know, it's obviously interesting that Shaw has come to us to present, whereas in the past we haven't seen hide nor hair of them in all the years I've been here, that's for sure. So obviously that, you know, that was a strategy on their part. And it did, you know, I did have questions in my mind going, you know, ding, 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 these bells going on. So a couple things I'd like to say is, if you could just in a little report, like some of these things that you know we need to be reminded about to confirm the confidence that we will have, because when I looked at the numbers for the broadband, right, that we were given with financial planning and projecting out, and all I'm thinking about is when is this going to make revenue for the city, right? And you said that, you know, it is providing for the community, but I think if it's successful and it provides a revenue source for the city of Rawson, that's enormous from my perspective. So I don't want to risk that, right? So when you've got providers like that, or telecommunications companies like Shaw saying, okay, we're here now in a much bigger way, then I go, oh, okay, you know, have they beat us to the punch, or, you know what I mean? So if you can clarify that niche market that you're speaking to right now, and why basically you need to just remind council about these, and not with a whole bunch of extra work, because you've done tons, I appreciate it.
No, I think get the
right?
task
Like,
force involved.
Yeah, and really maybe you need to rebut, like you need to write a little rebuttal thing on some of those things that you were going, you know, misinformation, and this is why we should carry on or commit as the city of Rawson. I didn't think I'd appreciate that, and maybe it would be good for all of council for a little refresher.
See, the first thing
Does that make sense?
First thing that went through my mind, can we save 200 grand?
That's what I was
That's
saying.
the very first thing that went through.
Yeah,
my mind.
because we're,
Yeah.
you know, we're
But,
you know,
exactly.
penny.
And yeah,
pinchers.
it is a very different product, you know, superficially, it appears to be around about the same.
Yeah.
But it is actually a very different situation, and
Right.
there are kind of three different components to it that can't be duplicated by the Shaw. It's the offering for the you know, the benefit for the end user, there's also the benefit and the, you know, the involvement of the city, I guess, and there's also the platform for providers, right, of different types of services. So those are three pretty pivotal aspects that don't exist in that situation.
Yeah, we're gonna glean any revenue by committing to Shaw, right? They get the revenue, the city of Rawson will never see the revenue.
Yeah, and, you know, they have invested quite a bit in this fiber swap, you know, and in doing what they have done. But nonetheless, still, their decisions from this point on are gonna be market driven, and, you know, you have to admit, we're a small town, and so, you know, they put all this time and money and effort right now, but, you know, the life cycle of the machines that he spoke about that, you know, sit on either end of the fiber, that life cycle is shortening more and more and more, and, you know, I mean, just think about...
Yeah, I was surprised that,
you know,
and I was
3 years
surprised
ago,
that they're
we
not
didn't have
more
anything like
forward
that.
thinking, like they should be out there 20 years or 10 years at least, right, with their design and all of that. Maybe that's going on, but the way he spoke, it sounded like we're just trying to keep up, which that's not how you should be operating.
Right,
Maybe
and
it's just
because
because
they're
of the
market-driven decisions, right? I mean,
Right.
that wouldn't be the case in downtown Calgary.
Exactly.
But it's just because they are trying to catch up here, because there's only $3,500.
Okay, well, we should probably,
Anyway,
this is great,
let's
and we
carry on.
need to know that. I would
Yeah.
really like the task force to I mean, I saw one member was here tonight, and maybe she can, and some of the other people can then get involved, and if you could bring something back to us, because I think we all have the same concerns, right? You know, and it is, if we can save $200,000, great, but it
Yeah.
sounds like we really need to understand the differences, because I know, like in my situation, I know if I say, I call him up and he says, yes, I can get 100 tomorrow or something, I won't be able to do that with the CBBC thing, you know, because I'm at the far end of town. So there are advantages I can see, but I like the idea that they're complementary and not, you know, one or the other. Anyway, anything else for members' report? No. Okay, Councillor Wallace?
Okay, well,
Big
you all
paper.
have a fair member report sitting in front of you. But I will read through it for the benefit of our media person over there. So, first off, from the board meeting in January, we had a delegation from a representative of the South Okanagan-Similkameen National Park Network. And something I had certainly never heard of before. And I guess this has been in the planning process for many years and then kind of dropped. And their request to the regional board is a letter of support for the province to reopen that discussion. It's an area of grasslands mostly, right, between Oliver, Osoyoos, and Karameus. I mean, you think of going out of Osoyoos up the hill there.
These are the people
Anyway.
that want the park, these are the ones that want
Pardon
the
me?
park. These are the people that want the park,
Yes.
as opposed to all the signs when you drive through the area that
Don't
say,
want it,
no
yeah.
park.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, and the board of directors asked for a staff report, so that's where that's sitting at. West Kootenai the Joint Transit Committee, that's an annual appointment. So I will be there again, and Directors Worley and Crockett will be joining me. And I don't have much to say about this one because, but there was a motion from the Policy Executive and Personnel Committee. It started from Director Caccioni, speaking about the director's stipends. And there wasn't a great deal of support for him when he brought it forward. I seconded him to allow discussion, but he managed to convince the PEP committee that this was something worth taking to the board. Unfortunately, he wasn't at the board meeting in January, so we deferred it, and that'll be hitting the February meeting. But what Director Caccioni is getting at is the imbalance between the stipends received by the electoral area directors and the municipal directors. And there's a fairly broad gap there, and given that they both increase the CPI, whatever, that percentage annually, the gap is widening. There are some divisive tendencies between municipal and electoral area directors. There are differences there, and it speaks to this structure of governance that we live within. Anyway, our next PEP committee meeting is tomorrow, and I'm quite sure that Director Caccioni is going to be speaking about this again. I can get more information, and before it goes to the board, we have another council meeting. So I'll bring that back and give you some more information there. An interesting piece that came with this discussion is just laying out the stipends received by municipal councillors, regional district reps for our area, as well as for Central Kootenai in comparison to East Kootenai. They vary significantly. But, you know, this council, for our population, receives not nearly as much as others. And, you know, it's just a discussion of, for consideration, that there is significant time spent in these positions. It's a pretty significant commitment, and it has its impact on our personal lives. We all know that. And we have to be very careful that it doesn't, well, that it isn't the domain of retired and independently wealthy people. I mean, you want to have a diverse group that sits around representing the community, and the community needs to recognize that if you don't provide sufficient compensation, then certain members simply cannot be at this table. Anyway, we'll get into that another time.
Can I ask a question, Kathy, Council? So has there ever been, I mean, you know, you talk the governance model thing, right? Has there ever been any appetite for this being considered at, you know, like the AKBLG and then UBCM, or would that not be a forum? Like the whole discrepancy between even the electoral areas directors, and I don't know what the conversation is, but has there been appetite?
That report to you.
Anyway, and you know, I guess historically, and I'm only speaking from Rossland councils, I mean, historically it's, you know, it has been people who have either, you know, it's you know, a labor of love, so to speak. I mean, or you're retired and it's something that you want to do for your community, right? So it's not really ever been considered a job, but it is an enormous job, as we all know. And the amount of time and weekends of reading every weekend. I think one of the things is that, you know, it would be nice to kind of get it out into the community. I mean, I know I have people thank me often, but most people have no idea the amount of reading and work that we do, right? It's just, you know, it's not something people bring up in conversation.
And I think it has increased.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I've got my 5 years of seeing how the commitment has increased, and I'm hearing it from other people who've been representing their areas for years, and they're saying just in the last 5 years. The number of issues that we're dealing with, I mean, we know that, downloading from the province and whatever, that, you know, it's pretty time-consuming commitment, this one. Anyway, on we go.
Yeah.
So I've just listed two motions that the board will be passing on to the AKBLG. The one, and this, at some point, I'd love to hear some feedback from some people that I know that are involved in fire service. But anyway, there was changes made with BC Ambulance and their protocols that were done without local government input. And basically, this motion just speaks to that individual communities should have the right to set the level of service that they want. And mostly that's coming out of Christina Lake, because they're in a position where they want their first responders to respond, because it's a 45-minute wait for an ambulance. That's what that situation deals with. On the other side, in Rossland, we would perhaps like to be able to set our level of service with our ability to pay. So, you know, that's what that one's speaking to. The other one, that's speaking to a situation that we have at the Regional District Board, because the elected director for Area D, which is rural Grand Forks, suffered a stroke last year, has been unable to return. So her alternate director has been fulfilling the role, and he's doing a fine job, no problem with that. Problem is that he's not elected. And it puts the regional district in a very, in a position where there is no legislation that governs this. It's a loophole in the legislation, and that's why that motion is going forward to the AKBLG. Solid Waste Management Plan Steering Committee has been set. So it's Rockwold, Russell, and McGregor from the Boundary, Worley and Cachoni and myself from the East End, and the first meeting is on February 13th. So that's going to be an interesting process. The reorganization that we were going through at the Regional District over the last year and a bit, creation of the deputy CAO position, which Mark Anderson has now moved into that position. So that means that they need a new manager of planning. Now that's funded solely by that function. Okay, so just for everyone's understanding. And then I've just itemized the preliminary budgets and where they are at, and provided this synopsis as well. They're still preliminary. The only one that has been approved is the environmental services budget. It's showing a small decrease. There have been no increases to the property taxation, to the property rec of environmental services since 2006. And there will be no tipping fee increases this year. I kind of jumped there on you, but anyway. The sewerage budget is the one that is probably the most concerning, especially if this council wants to try to reduce our municipal taxation in order to offset regional district, which is what I heard at the last meeting. So we're looking at a 16.78% increase in sewerage. Now a piece of that is the new cost apportionment that Rossland is taking on. That's the I can't remember whether it was 52 or 56, whatever that increase was.
56,000.
But the main part of this is the river crossing of the Interceptor. At the sewerage meeting in January, I was very disturbed to see the number that had originally been approved at around 2 million as an estimate had grown to 3 million, and then it's now at 3.8 in the budget that we just received last week. We made motions for staff to come back and revisit the other options that we had previously been looking at, just to go under the river to use the Victoria Street Bridge. They were at, earlier in these discussions turned down because a simple pipe bridge was supposed to be the least cost, and the most efficient way of doing it. And then at our meeting last week, Director Crockett supported me in having staff send a letter to the City of Trail requesting that they consider that they just build the bridge any way they want to, without any restrictions from the sewer service, and perhaps we can lease the space off of it.
Do they want a pipe bridge so they can have their little walking loop thing going on? Like, really, that,
No, we're only talking about paying the portion that carries the
No,
sewer
but-
across, right?
no, I know that,
They
but-
build whatever they want.
Oh, so just the infrastructure that takes the pipe underneath, but if they can put the pipe across the, what's it called, the Victoria Bridge? What's that other bridge called, the Trail Bridge? Victoria Bridge. They can run that pipe on that bridge for less money than this pipe bridge, but I just have this sense that they want the pipe bridge so that they can get back a second bridge so the people in Trail and elsewhere have that circuit to walk, because people were very unhappy about that
Well,
bridge.
there's some pretty significant
subtle little
changes that would
things.
have to be done with the existing infrastructure in order to reroute it to the Victoria Street Bridge as well.
Right,
So that's not a simple one.
right.
And
Councillor Wallace, isn't our only commitment to just getting the sewage across? If Trail decides they want to do a pedestrian bridge or a car bridge or a buggy bridge, that's on their dime. That's not part of our agreement.
absolutely, that has
Okay.
been very clearly identified, and we have 3 different engineering firms that are working on this, one who is overseeing the other 2. But, it's a significant increase. The other piece is the way that it's been written into the budget. Those funds are being borrowed at a 5% interest rate, which seems very strange at these times, especially when we have access to the Municipal Finance Authority. Anyway, so,
Is there an explanation for that?
I'm not at this point in time, no.
And we're looking at paying our new percentage for this bridge, right? The 24.9% is what we pay for whatever this bridge is.
Well, but I mean, that continues to be,
Ongoing negotiations,
Yes.
we are still
Mhm.
yet to receive the report from the RDKB to tell us what exactly they're considering sole, dual, and regional.
Yeah.
well, there is a map,
But,
but that's all that
I
has
would
been
suggest
received
that
at this
that's
point.
not
no.
what we asked for in the municipal.
We need more detail, for sure.
Okay. So victim services, this is, it's a fairly small budget for the regional district. It's a service that is very well respected and relied on for people when they need it. It was begun by the province. The provincial contribution has not increased, I don't think, ever. And for the last few years, the service has been relying on drawing from reserves in order to be able to meet their ends. So there was a small increase to that budget last year. Fire service was interesting. And I told you last week out of my head it was a 3% increase that had been proposed. So it was actually 2.51. And they do have work to do on that budget. I think they have to finalize 2013 and see where the surplus is at. But the direction from the committee members was for the fire service to come back with a 0% budget. So we will be seeing that next week. The airport has no tax requisition, and I just want to say, yay. So, and that's an important piece to understand because that plays into the general government admin budget, because the airport is owned by the board as a whole. It is not owned only by the East End. So the revenue coming in from that sale, which is 1.28 million, is now going into the general government admin budget. That's why the budget is so significantly larger than it has been in the past. The requisition is only increasing by 1.24, and there has been no decision by the board yet where those funds will go, other than 100,000 of it is slated for the reclamation project at the airport, which was part of the purchase agreement. There's the old fuel tanks that were originally put in by the Flying Club that the City of Trail wants to have removed so that they avoid any environmental situation that may be involved there, and that as part of the agreement, the regional district agreed to remove them. So there's 100,000 in the budget. It better not come anywhere near that cost, but it's there just in case. Culture, Arts and Rec. Now this is one where the past debt of from the old Recreation Commission, that old debt retired last year. Most of that gap is being eaten up by the Greater Trail Community and Arts Center. And that's one thing that is pretty unanimously supported around the East End table, is that the Charles Bailey Theatre, the Visac, the Senior Center, everything that is and Selkirk College, everything that's incorporated in that building is a true regional benefit. And you've got pretty significant support for that building. There's plans for upgrading the boiler, and looking at making the building more energy efficient. So that's where those funds are going. There's also a proposal. Yep.
Does Selkirk College pay revenues? They have a lease, yeah.
Yep. Trail District Arts Council has made a proposal to assume the management of the Charles Bailey Theatre. And there are pros and cons to it. But anyway, I would suggest that that council have a little reading when you have the time, because it will have to be a decision made about that.
And that proposal doesn't save any money, it costs more money.
Well, on first reading it costs more money, but then maybe not. It's it's a very underutilized theater. It's the largest theater between Cranbrook and the Okanagan. There's huge potential there. I don't know. I can't really answer that at the moment. Economic Development Service, 0 tax requisition for 2014. So I just want to say, yay, again. Anyway, and the service contract between the RDKB and the LCCDT was ratified by the board at the last meeting. The appointments to the LCI are Mayor Granstrom and also Mayor Caccini, although I do not believe that she takes that role until the budgets are finalized in order to avoid the Schlenker decision stepping in. Remember, the Schlenker is the that an elected official can't be in a position of voting on a financial plan in 2 different bodies. That's what it is.
And what about our mayor? Is he already there, or what's the difference?
He doesn't
with him?
make the decision at the East End.
I see.
And Mayor Caccini is now the representative from Fruitvale.
Oh, okay, I got it, yep.
The transit budget, 1.6% increase, and you see how that affects the city of Rossland. And I've told you before that there are discussions afoot about changing the direction of the transit service, given that the school board is not working with the transit service on on their students and how their students ride buses, and they've gone out and purchased a bunch of new buses. So we've pretty much got agreement around the East End table that we should not have our focus in delivering that service on moving students, because the school board is not playing with us in that one. Cemeteries budget, a small increase there. Our request for the 13,800 hasn't been included. It was included as 5,000 because our request was a little bit late, understandably so. And then the general government admin.
So wait, is that going
had
to
a
be
small
amended?
increase.
Is it going to be amended to reflect the 13,800, or?
It hasn't been approved yet. These were all just received. The
Okay.
only one that was approved was the environmental
Right,
services.
but I mean, the request will be amended to the larger amount.
The request was received at
Okay.
the meeting, but not in time for it to impact the budget. Okay, that's all I have to say at the moment.
So, do you have an overall, I know this is just a
Yeah.
draft, but do you have an overall percentage increase that this thing is looking at?
No,
Not yet, okay.
no.
Thank you, this
That's
was a
beyond my
wonderful,
time
wonderful report.
and technical contribution.
Okay, that was
I mean,
great.
you can kind of put it together with this one, but not really.
No, I
So
was
it's a
hoping
pretty
to save
complex
myself the
budget.
math.
Yeah.
And I'll ask this again if I may. Does the board, do what like we do here and say, okay, Darren, you gotta tighten your belt again, rather than just always seeing increases? Like, does that conversation happen? That's all I'm curious about. Like, do you say from your seat there, City of Rossland would greatly appreciate, or, myself as representative from the City of Rossland would like to recommend that we, don't increase the budget any more than 2% or 0%.
We've been calling Director Crockett Captain Zero,
Oh, good.
and I've been seconding him.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, absolutely, but you have to understand as well that the regional district works differently with budgets in that you have stakeholders involved in each service.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
only the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
participants that are paying for each service, and they are absolutely separate. You cannot transfer funds between them, so it's somewhat different than what we deal with here. So you have
Different pockets.
absolutely. I mean,
Many.
it's only the people in that function that are paying for that function, and all of the budgets are managed at the committee level prior to going to the board.
And then the recommendations from those committees go to the board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that work's done at the committee level.
So if I'm looking at this correctly, page 3 of 4, it says here, there's little happy arrows at the bottom. It says a total, looks like a 12% increase on the whole budget, and then the requisition amount, total tax increase is 3.83. So it's $697,000, and then that's apportioned between all of us paying in. Is that correct? Or, no, that wouldn't be,
No.
because that's everybody. And that's like
I
stuff we
mean,
don't
that's really not a
participate in.
very useful number,
Yeah,
is it?
yeah, yeah,
Because
just-
it doesn't
yeah.
speak to which participants are,
Yeah,
right?
okay. So we don't know any of that.
So there are some other reports that will be coming of, presenting this material in a way that you can get what
Great.
they're after.
Okay, thank
That's
you
all.
very much.
Thank you.
Let's see, anything else, Councillor Thatcher?
Not much I say, just wanted to bring up that, open house for the museum.
Yeah.
Also, there's the Heritage Week at the museum. The museum's gonna be open the 18th to 22nd, 12 to 6. And on the 20th, they're gonna have a guest speaker, Jamie Forbes. He's gonna be talking about the steamboats that travel on the Columbia. It might be interesting to
February?
February 20th at 4 o'clock, yeah. And also, the museum's got a group of people together, starting to interview some of our senior citizens of town, collecting some of their memories and stories, so, it's gonna be interesting to see what
project.
it's gonna be a really interesting project.
Who's doing that?
A group of people from the museum.
From the museum.
They're interviewing, a lot of the senior citizens around town, and
Great.
if anybody, they've got a great list of names right now, but if anybody knows of anybody that should be included on that list, we'll get a hold of them.
Well, before they pass on,
Well,
especially.
and especially this year, we've lost already, we've lost
Yeah.
Well,
some really good characters that,
I know that there's some video of Cookie, and
Yeah.
I've seen a bit of it, and thankfully that was.
yeah, so
That
that's what they're trying to do is
That's great.
get some of the old stories and some of the memories for some of the old, the old timers, and you know,
Some of them are
collect them
getting
and,
there.
you know,
Good.
collect them so that they won't be lost. So it's gonna be a good project. I think it's gonna be interesting. How they're gonna put together, if they're gonna put together in a book or I'm not sure how they're gonna,
Maybe both, you know,
how they're gonna put it
technology.
out, but it'll be interesting. It'll be a
Great.
good project.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Councillor Spear?
Okay, thank you. I just have a few things. I was just wondering, the Chamber of Commerce made a presentation to council last council meeting, and they requested the use of the Rotary building, and I just wonder when that will come to council for discussion, so that it doesn't slide off the table.
Your worship, through to council, I'm waiting for the Chamber of Commerce to come back to me with exactly what they're asking for.
Oh.
With attached financials on that as well.
Okay, well, I'm the liaison, so I will pass that on. Chamber to Tracy with details of financials.
Okay, anything else?
Yes. Also, we did approve the splash page, because I left early that night, and you did that later in the evening, right? Okay, thanks for Tourism Roslyn. So I did attend the chamber meeting 2 weeks, probably 3 now, but everything was pretty much reported by the executive director, Julie, when she came to council, so I don't need to say anything more on that. But it was my, again, inaugural meeting back at the chamber, so it was nice to be back with the group. I wanted to clarify about the Seven Summits Learning Center, because I was stunned last time. And it definitely is not a private school. I think you all got the emails, but I just want it for the record. It is a publicly funded self-designed school, it's called. It's publicly funded. The amounts that the kids pay are, the fees up to $1,000, are to retain the facility and have the facility, basically the fees around renting or leasing the facility. And I still feel very strongly that we should, at least in principle as a council, be speaking in every positive way that we can to support that grades 8 to 12 school in our community for all of the reasons that I've said many times around the table, and for the economy of our community, for the, it ties into the Red Mountain presentation tonight, the Racers presentation, the academies, bringing international students into our community, and having having a K-12 system within our school, and it is a public system. And of course, we've got the Francophone school as well, which is great. So I just want council to remember that it is part of our OCP, and I still obviously feel very strongly that we would rather have a public school in one building that was SD20 school system, but that's not the way it turned out. So I think we can be pretty proud of the community of people who put that together, and we should be supportive. And I still wish that we would have been able to at least put a few $1,000s towards that initiative that is still just getting going, but that's a decision of council. So the museum, I'm taking my class to the museum for an educational program this week. So they're really coming up with some good ideas, and so that was all part of their strategic plan, so I'm really excited. And I know that there's other grades at what was the high school last year that used the museum. So this is a really neat initiative. It's a program between Victoria and Rossland, and the kids are going to go, it doesn't matter, that's my class, it could be any class, they're going to go to the museum, and they're going to learn about ski history and visit all of that in the museum, the display, the ski display, the history, and then they're going to do some writing, and then they're going to exchange writing with Victoria, and Victoria's going to write about oceans, and these kids are going to write about snow, and they're going to display the writing in the Royal Museum. And I don't know if the ones coming up here are going to get displayed at our museum, but anyway, I just thought it was a really neat, initiative, so I'm excited about going up there. And so are the kids. I also wanted to say that I'm on the committee at the Rawson School up here, for renaming of the school. I think I mentioned that to all of you. We're actually presenting names, of which I'm not going to reveal right now until it goes to the school board, and the school board will ultimately have the final decision on the name for our school, although we're going to, of course, give them our input from the committee with regards to a new name for our Roslyn School. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, the only thing I have is that I will be attending the LCCDT meeting next week, and the Sustainability Commission meeting that was scheduled for tomorrow, I think has been canceled. That's it.
All
This
right.
meeting is adjourned.
Oh,
Oh.
Your Worship, we have a.
In camera, no?
Well, this meeting's adjourned.
Yeah.
We'll,
We need a motion.
well, we do, okay, we have a motion to recess in camera. Councillor Blooming, seconded by Councillor Stern, and that the regular meeting's adjourned. Good night, Sarah.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Darren's been sitting here all night.
I know,
Couldn't
poor
you gone
Darren.
home and then come back, Darren?
Should've.
Could have gone home and watched a